Over 20 years ago, Alex Jones created the media platform called InfoWars, and in the decades since, it's grown into a truly remarkable institution with over 200 radio affiliates, tens of millions of unique website visitors monthly, and a 24/7 live news TV channel broadcasting from state-of-the-art studios in Austin, Texas. InfoWars has become the most trusted independent news source in the country, dedicated to delivering breaking news, live coverage of special events, and exclusive reports you won't find anywhere else. While the old guard media struggles to maintain supremacy in a landscape rocked by innovation and technology, InfoWars has been at the forefront of the information revolution. From 8 million radio listeners, over 2 million YouTube subscribers, or the billions of views of our online content, InfoWars proves dominant in every facet of media we enter. For the hardest-hitting reports, uncompromising analysis, for high-profile interviews and bombshell revelations, accept no substitutes. Demand truth. Demand InfoWars. InfoWars. Tomorrow's news today.
As above, so below. That's what the old alchemists would say back in the days of Plato. And it's certainly true about the universe we live in. What you see happening down at the little microscopic level, you also see happening at the gigantor level. I got a call from my First Amendment lawyer that he got contacted last night by the University of Missouri Law School. And they told him that they're going to be joining in on the lawsuit against me in Charlottesville. And that the brief basically does call for an end to the First Amendment. And he said, it's unbelievable. I can't believe that they're very honest about it. And so that'll be filed later today, and we'll have that. Now, that's down at the little level with Alex Jones and their test case. The Alex Jones statute they're trying to get through, they now admit they are. These are universities, many of them taxpayer-funded. Georgetown's law section is taxpayer-funded, though it's a private school, openly trying to destroy the First Amendment and admitting it. Now, I knew about this a few years ago, and I knew about it in the TPP because it got leaked by Patriots. And Drudge came here 2.5 years ago, and he'd met with the Supreme Court Justice and others, and they'd been told under the international copyright law via the EU and the TPP that internet freedom as we know it will be completely gone. And so I'd already read the TPP sections and covered it then a few years ago, but it was so draconian, people couldn't believe that that might actually happen. They couldn't believe it. And now the EU has already put some of this into play, but tomorrow they're set to pass Article 13 and Article 11. And this snuck up on me because I knew that they were trying to get the TPP global legislation through the EU since the TPP had already fallen apart when Trump pulled out of it, and that Juncker wanted it to censor EU citizens, but also reach into the United States as they're already doing with some of their other programs. And sure enough, they're voting on it tomorrow. The EU is about to destroy the internet as we know it. And folks, when we say that, I've got Article 13 and 11 and the others here in full in my hand. So we're going to be showing you what they actually say. And in short, it allows tech companies to data mine everything you do, track everything you do, bypass courts, and fine you directly millions of euros every time you even quote 3 words out of one of their articles. So it ends fair use, ends communication, but it's worse than that. There will then be software templates that are run on all major browsers, or the EU will fine them billions, that just like when you're typing in your phone a cuss word, it won't let you. Everything will be uploaded into a big database by the big tech companies, by the big newspapers. And so when you try to even show one of their articles and talk about what they're doing, you'll be banned from uploading video. You'll be banned from even doing screenshots. You'll be banned from quoting it. And there will be a template interface over your computer operating system in live time, updated by 20,000 bureaucrats that Google is running. The EU is accepting it. And they are Southern Poverty Law Center, ADL, trained and George Soros funded. I'm not kidding. So live time, they program the algorithm and are constantly changing it and controlling what you can type and what you can do. Remember Shazam came out 10 years ago where you can hold up your smartphone and it hears the music in the mall and tells you what it is? That's live time. We try to upload, videos they don't want seen to YouTube. It's banned. This is the total control, and they're launching it. It's light years worse than communist China. It's exactly what Matt Drudge warned about when he came here a few years ago and said this is what he was told they would do, where they were going to ban linking. But it's worse. They admit all memes will be banned. You have to first have them approved by the Southern Poverty Law Center Google interface globally, and the EU is going to sue other countries that don't adopt this. We'll be back. I have extremely grave news for all of you. And I want you to understand, this is not hype, this is not hyperbole. I have a full spectrum analysis of what the EU snuck up to a vote they announced a few days ago, an early snap vote by the unelected EU bureaucracy that is happening tomorrow on Article 13 and Article 11 that were previously in the Trans-Pacific Partnership that Trump pulled out of, that the Electronic Frontier Foundation, even the mainline liberal groups admit, will end internet freedom as we know it. Paul's put out a viral video. The EU is about to destroy the internet as we know it, and no one seems to care. Well, he put that out yesterday. This is one of the top stories now. People are actually reading it, and it is horrific. Now, major universities across the world are backing this because they've already created anti-free speech zones. They are now metastasizing in Europe, the UK, and the US, and Australia, and universities are suing everywhere to restrict the First Amendment and free speech in Europe. The globalists are making their move more accelerated because people are awake to what they're doing, so they're trying to shut us up and try to grab victory from the jaws of their defeat. Now, Paul Watson's going to be joining us to talk more about this coming up at the end of this segment in just a few minutes. But I want you to understand, it's worse than he even says in his video. It's worse. This is a total spy grid. And this is the tech companies allowed to have unlimited data mining and sharing, but then the general public isn't allowed to. And then the EU will take control via these companies of the browser systems in live time and control what you can even type. They say it. You're like, well, how do they do that? Just like you can't upload copyrighted music? Well, they're going to say words that are racist or hurtful you can't upload. This is total censorship template. They're saying you can't even quote an article, which is totally protected in European law, U.S. law. They're saying that you can't share memes. It has to go through a program that decides, is it hurtful? Is it hateful? Is it copyright? Is it authorized? And then the computer will decide if it's copyright, not someone proving it in court. They're more scared of memes because machine learning, scanning it and reading it, their AI systems can't understand human humor. And so they're unable to censor memes. They admit this. They're panicking over it. And they don't know what to do because the machines don't get humor. And that's why everybody's been getting past Twitter and the algorithm censorship by being sarcastic, how they love Hillary, how they love censorship. Oh, how great it is that Muslims stab some more people. This is mainstream news. If you're tuning in on the radio, this is Motherboard. This is the LA Times. This is Metro. This is the left finally gets it because it's going to be Joe Rogan. And it's going to be other people that are popular across the board that aren't controlled by the system that are the target. But they're the people staying on the fence during all this censorship because they think, oh, it's just the libertarians, the right-wingers that are getting censored. And then they're the real target, the PewDiePies. Watch. So if we don't all rally and say no to this and champion those of us that are being censored, you're all next. Here's Paul Watson's powerful report.
They're really doing it. They're coming for the one thing that we thought was sacred. They're coming to ban the memes. Research researchers at University College London have developed an algorithm that can automatically detect and censor hateful content before it's uploaded. What could possibly go wrong? Could this algorithm be abused by partisan social media giants to prevent the viral spread of memes that benefit right-of-centre political movements and candidates? They'd never do such a thing, would they? But why does this matter? Because memes can change history. As Richard Dawkins first explained, memes are like genes for information, and human evolution has been guided as much by memes as genes. Memes compete with each other for survival. Control the meme, control future human thought and behavior. This is about influence. Leftist websites like Salon, The New Yorker, and The Guardian have been bitterly complaining for years about the undue influence of meme warfare on contemporary politics. They warn that the political meme has become the centerpiece of disinformation campaigns, and the ability of memes to communicate ideology is boundless. The power of the political meme has never been greater. Now, what possible motive do you think the left could have for wanting to ban memes? Could it really be because the left can't meme? Surely not. I mean, surely they wouldn't. Yep, it's that. The University College London study found that the most effective and widely spread memes largely originated in two places: the Donald and Paul, both of which aren't really known for their left-wing sympathies. So now we finally have solid proof, backed up by the kind of facts and logic that would even put Ben Shapiro to shame, that the left can't meme. And as we all know, if something doesn't benefit the left, the only reasonable thing to do is ban it. So you remember I mentioned that algorithm which is able to identify harmful content and prevent it from being uploaded? Guess what the EU wants to make social media companies do? Develop an algorithm that can identify harmful content and prevent it from being uploaded. Well, imagine my shock. The EU's new Article 13 copyright proposal, which will be voted on this week, would force websites to install upload filters that would automatically censor any content deemed to be a copyright violation. This is a complete misunderstanding of both fair use and transformative content. But this is the EU we're talking about, and they're not known for having a firm grasp of the sovereign interests of the individual. Google-owned YouTube and Facebook already have filters that block porn and copyrighted content before it's posted. So in effect, all this will achieve is a de facto ban on memes and a draconian crackdown on the sharing of information. You know, the entire foundation of how the internet is structured and what makes it work. The proposal would also institute a link tax, which would require users to get a license from the publisher just to include snippets from a news article like this. I literally wouldn't be allowed to display a screenshot from a news article like this without getting sued for copyright violation. Click the link in the description below to contact your MEP and tell them to vote against this absurd proposal. Because if it's implemented and used as a template for other countries outside of the EU, the internet as we know and love it is finished. In short, Article 13 will impose widespread censorship of all the content you share online, be it a parody video, a remix, a meme, a blog post, comments on Reddit, a piece of code, live streaming your gaming experience, or even a link in a tweet. Spain also wants to ban memes that are insulting to politicians. CNN doxes and harasses people for posting memes. So it's a pincer movement. On the one hand, you've got the establishment in general that doesn't understand the language of memes and is therefore frustrated that it can't control them. Then on the other hand, you've got the political left, which no longer understands humor and therefore is completely useless at creating them. At the legislative level, they're going to use copyright laws to censor memes. And at the cultural level, they're going to continue to hype the contrived moral panic of spicy memes being a new form of virulent online hate speech. Just as many left-wing websites have removed comment sections because studies prove they influence the reader more than the article itself, this is yet another attempt to rig the game and monopolize the narrative. It doesn't matter what your politics are. Censorship can never be justified. And all
right, Paul spends a few more minutes really knocking it out of the park. We're going to come back with Paul Watson live from London, breaking it all down. But I want to explain. He's smart to focus in on the meme area because people get how wrong this is. But it's far bigger and far worse, and it's so insane that it makes communist Chinese censorship look like a joke. Because the browsers And the software that they're going to make ubiquitous under these laws will not even let you type things they say aren't authorized. Think about how you already can't really type cuss words with your smartphone when you're trying to send a cuss word to somebody. Well, it's beyond that. It's beyond that. It's total control, and it's run by Soros. Well, the corporate-funded fascist left worldwide is calling for the end of free speech. They're calling for the end of the nuclear family. They're calling for one huge communal corporate programmed group of atomized, helpless zombies who have whatever the latest culture is they download from their smartphones and Netflix. Well, ladies and gentlemen, even the left, I think, has a limit. And so we've got the Electronic Frontier Foundation. We've got Motherboard. We've got Gizmodo. We've got the LA Times with headlines, "The internet is ending as we know it." The EU is passing fascist copyright law that ends free speech as we know it. Those are the headlines. They admit that it even ends memes and makes you upload it through software developed by major universities and funded by Soros and the 20,000 bureaucrats they've hired at Google from the Southern Poverty Law Center. Remember that? That's mainstream news, to run it. And then they go into this database and they update new images and new things every hour that they want banned. And we have the Project Veritas internal videos where they're meeting with Google and YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and like, well, what's your main thing? Well, they like American flags or veterans. We just ban those damn rednecks. They never know why nobody's their friend or nobody talks to them. They're just shadow banned. Dumb white people. These are quotes. So the universities create all these so-called disenfranchised minorities, a lot of them, then give them jobs as the new house slaves for Google, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, in their programming. And there's a lot of white people, too. They're usually the managers and are involved over it. And you've got the University of Missouri filing a new brief against me today in the Charlottesville situation, calling for the end of free speech. But why not? You've got the professors there banning white men from the campus and saying, get me some muscle over here. So we go to Paul Watson now. He's going to be hosting the 4th hour today to go over Article 13 and Article 11. Then after he goes, I'm going to go through it word for word for you because it also allows certain select companies knighted by the EU globally in Article 11 to data mine you. Because you notice they passed the GDPR that has nothing to do with protecting your privacy. It harasses everybody and puts the EU in charge. The U.S. is under it. Most of the U.S. sites Paul tried to go to are now dark in the EU. You can't even go to them. Well, this is just the TPP they couldn't get past a few years ago. They've put it into this now, and it actually says that they are exempt from the data mining provision. Select companies are exempt from everything, just like these big corporations are exempt from taxes. They've done it again. Joining us is Paul Joseph Watson. Finally, this is something I notice that the left and everybody else that's been on the fence is starting to freak out about, Paul. Finally, everybody should get your video and email it and Twitter it and Facebook it while we still can. It's at Prison Planet on Twitter. People should go there and get it now and jam it down the throat. It needs to be 50 million people need to see this, but only by hand sharing it will that many people see it. Paul Watson.
Yeah, if you read some of those headlines which you've got, Alex, you know, they sound more alarmist than we do in some cases. So this is them freaking out about this because this snuck up on everybody. So they're having a vote on this in the committee tomorrow. If that passes, which it looks like it could do because most of these European parties support it, these factions within the EU, then it's going to go for a vote in European Parliament next month. And there are two different articles, as you said. Article 11 is the link tax. And as I said in the video, this would literally stop people from using screenshots in videos or posting excerpts from news articles. Like, you know, when you post a link on Twitter, it gives you like the first sentence of the news article in the tweet organically. You would have to get permission just to do that, and you would have to pay a link tax to the publisher of the news story for that to happen. So it's not just about banning memes. It's undermining the entire infrastructure of the internet What makes the internet what it is? The sharing of links, the sharing of information. So that's Article 11. Then 13 is the upload filter. So you know that YouTube and Facebook already have upload filters that block porn, that block copyrighted music content before it's allowed to be posted. Well, now they want to make not only those websites, but basically every website on the internet culpable legally for copyright. So they would have to install these draconian filters where you have to get permission from Facebook, from Reddit, from YouTube for everything you post before it goes live, before it goes online. Of course, that's a complete disaster. As he said, massive corporations will be exempt from it. They'll get the special level tier access like they already do on YouTube for the advertising, and it will be, you know, Joe Schmo and all the independent media people that will be punished by this. This is what they're doing. It's snuck up on us. And there's a link in that video, and the website, you know, the campaign website is saveyourinternet.eu. People in Europe can contact their MEP right now, the vote is tomorrow, and tell them to vote against Article 13 and against Article 11. This is huge. There's nowhere near enough news coverage about it, given the threat it represents, and it's absolutely massive, Alex. But
and it shows you where they're going. And notice they got their one thing through a few years ago. We all accepted going under EU regulation or be sued. The Democrats are supporting it. So we're now under the GDPR, where they surveil everybody, making sure we're not getting anybody's data, even though they opt in. But then magically, now they're about to pass something exempting all of themselves if they're let into the club by the EU under Article 13. And what does Soros say in the WikiLeaks? This came out, of course, last year. Came out in a later WikiLeaks. He said, we need to have the total EU control through the UN of the internet to ban nationalist and conservative speech and to push our stories. It's a quote from him in the WikiLeaks saying, and to push our stories. So, I mean, the guy is a frickin' supervillain, Paul. And you think about this, they've already started where they pre-censor tweets that Donald Trump Jr. sends out, or the president, or I send out. Remember, for months, I'd try to send out stuff that had Trump in it or the campaign in it, and they would block it and not let me tweet it. And the crew checked it, and they said, no, it's true. There's certain things I can't tweet. Now, they stopped a few weeks ago. But they admit, remember in Congress, they talked about censoring you and me? 4 months ago, they said the algorithm will be functional in a few months. And Google, Twitter, and Facebook all were looking at each other, all their heads, bragging to Congressman Wigley that in a few months they could stop you. Stop you by name, Paul.
No, there have been studies done, I talk about them in the video, whereby they can shift millions and millions of votes on the day of national elections purely via, you know, where links are ranked on Google, via the algorithm, what's at the top. They can change millions of votes. This is huge. What's interesting is that these big social media companies are now machines. The Silicon Valley leftists in San Francisco control them. The heads of these big social media companies, you'd be surprised, Alex, they actually believe in free speech to a certain extent. They're real liberals, but it's gotten away from them so much. The machine has taken over that now even they're afraid of it. They're afraid of the way it's heading. So it's interesting times right now.
Because now they know that the EU or the Communist Chinese or anybody can just grab it. Apple has decided, though, to move to China, give them all the keys to everybody's internet, all their Apple codes, and it's just incredible. A few more minutes with Paul Watson, then I'm getting to the real devastating part of this. Now, one of our great crew, Drew, very prolific video editor, great artist. He's only been here a few months, and I already love him. He made a funny meme because I was scratching my beard in the office saying, when does it stop scratching when you start growing a beard? Because I've never really grown one. And he said, oh, it stops in a few weeks. But he made a funny joke of it. And it's a meme. And so much of memes, it's a meme of me growing a beard, if you're a radio listener. We'll show it to TV viewers. And it's silly. So much of these memes is making fun of yourself. And that's what the left doesn't get. They did all these comedy pieces on me trying to attack me, and it made me more popular with young people. And so now they've kind of gotten wise to it, so they've stopped doing it, which is kind of a bummer. I should have claimed that I hated it, and please don't throw me in that briar patch. But when I was in Hawaii, I ran into teenagers wearing homemade InfoWars shirts When my daughter goes and sees her friends that go to public school in Austin, she goes to private, they're wearing Trump 2020 shirts. They're wearing InfoWars shirts. And I'm not bragging, but it's like Elvis has showed up. My daughter's super popular all over town because she's nice and funny and everything, but she, with all the coolest girls at 14, because her daddy's Alex Jones. And I constantly am having to sign autographs or sign things for them, it's crazy. Now, again, imagine Super Deluxe and all these leftist groups for years attacked me. They gave me their young audience. They're idiots. And now they're wearing InfoWars shirts, and they totally get it because they're being brainwashed. And it's Paul Watson super popular. And Michael Steven Crowder, all these people. So I'm ranting, and I want to go back and finish up with Paul here. It's just that the left doesn't get humor because they're not the left. I mean, you look at the University of Missouri that's joining in on the lawsuit against me for Charlottesville with all that weird made-up stuff, claiming that I said some dude murdered the girl. I never said that. I said Soros funding the Antifa and letting them attack people helped contribute to the woman's death. But they don't care. In the new brief that's going to come out today, they say they want to end my free speech. Well, remember the lady at the University of Missouri? What's her name? I forget. Melissa Click. Let's play a clip of her. This is just a few years ago. Remember, they lost 25% of their enrollments after this, and they blamed it, saying right-wing media made us look bad. No, you said no white males were allowed for the weekend in the main commons park of it. And people are like, whoa, this is crazy. I'm not putting my kids in a bizarre indoctrination center. But that's what they're doing at Starbucks and everywhere. And so you've got a gentleman, it turned out, that was Asian with a white guy trying to go on with their cameras because they're journalists with the school and being told, you aren't allowed. And then she goes and gets another male who's not white. She says, I need some muscle. Personally intimidates and assaults student reporter. Blocks freedom of press in a public space. Refuses to resign. And now this university is going to gang up like a bunch of little red-bellied piranhas, ruby-bellied commies, and come in and join a lawsuit on me that's totally frivolous just so they can pile on more motions and stuff and try to financially destroy us, which they're not doing because our listeners are doubling down, buying the products, sharing the links. And that's what they can't stand because we innovate. We're the libertarians. We're the classical liberals. We get around everything you do. I came from Access Television. I was fired for criticizing Bill Clinton and told shut up. And they thought I'd shut up, and I didn't. I had the #1 ratings. Then I got syndicated. Then I lost 70% of my affiliates for exposing 9/11 being an inside job of the globalist with radical Islam. I'm never going to shut up, and I'm going to win. And we're going to defeat George Soros. But all of you mainline folks that kind of ride the rail of covering some conservative, some libertarian, some conspiracy, you think you're safe. And then you have me on your show, like Joe Rogan. Good guy. Has me on. It's the #1 show he ever did. Now he's got one more that's bigger. That's great. But they censored it and blocked it off iTunes, wouldn't let him list it, wouldn't put it up for a day or so. Letting him know, you have him back on, we'll kick you off the platform or we'll dial you back. They'll get you later anyways, Joe. And I don't care about not being invited back on the show and everybody asks for it. That isn't what matters to me. It's that they got to you. And they've gotten to all these other people that think, oh, put Alex Jones down. That's the litmus test. Make little comments about, oh, George Soros, he never worked with the Nazis. Why? He was captured by them. It's one thing if the Young Turks put that out or CNN as a paid talking point. But when I see that coming out of Joe's mouth, I'm going to cover that later, and I see other stuff like that, I've got to counter it. Because if the biggest podcaster in the world that Joe is, that I've known since 1998, if everybody just kind of sits back and doesn't cover all the censorship and all the things that are happening, we're going to lose everything. So I need the prominent people like PewDiePie and who's got 20 billion views on YouTube. By the way, Paul, you've got on your Twitter that you have 275 million views on your YouTube channel. Bro, we got 2 billion on one channel, a billion with the others, and I was told by YouTube executives 5 years ago we had 5 billion views on other parts of the platform. They wanted us to censor everybody and monetize that, and I said no. And they explained to me the amount of money, but I didn't do it. So we had 5 billion views 5 years ago, Paul. So when you say you have 275 million views on your YouTube, and you're proud of that, bro, you've got over 1 billion views total online, my friend. Go ahead, just on YouTube. Go ahead.
Yeah, getting back to what we were talking about. Okay, so this votes tomorrow. People can go on this website, contact their MEP. Listen to this. This is what security specialist Bruce Schneier said about it. Article 13 effectively deputizes social media and other internet companies as copyright police, forcing them to implement highly invasive surveillance infrastructure across their entire service. Then he says governments and corporations will go on and it'll be repurposed and allow them to do it, which will entrench ubiquitous surveillance into the fabric of the internet. That's what he's saying about it. You mentioned PewDiePie. He talked about it, by the way. But again, this goes back to the fact, as you said, that the left can't meme. They did a study out of University College London. The 2 biggest websites for sharing and effectively sharing memes are the Donald on Reddit and Paul on 4chan. Again, both pro-Trump forums, right? This is why the New Yorker, the Guardian, and all of them have been bitterly complaining about how we're good at reaching people through the influence of memes. They're panicked about it. You remember the left removed comment sections. Vice, Salon, all these big left-wing websites a few years ago removed comment sections because there was an academic study that found people are more influenced by what's in the comment section than the content of the actual article. So they can lie all day in the article about us, which they do. People then scroll down to the comments and say, oh, this is complete BS. That influences them more. So what they did is just remove the comment sections, even though it, harms their own website traffic. They did it anyway because they didn't want to be challenged. This is all about being challenged on their narrative.
And they've sued me saying don't use Pepe the Frog when it's total fair use and the guy said publicly use it.
Yeah, he just gave an interview saying you can use it, and even that you could monetize it in a 2015 interview. So now they're trying to get us with that. But again, this is all about, again, the EU has no respect whatsoever for the sovereign right of the individual. Oh, but they want to protect our privacy. Complete BS. This does the exact opposite. It creates general monitoring of internet use across the entire internet.
And it says that it allows the big companies that they allowed to come into the system to, quote, be exempt from data mining.
Yeah, they're always exempt. It's like Jimmy Kimmel can talk about tragedies the day after and monetize it. He gets advertisements on his YouTube channel. We do that. We almost get our YouTube channel deleted completely. So it's 2 standards every single time. And as you said, this GDPR, I was in Spain, like 20% of US news websites inaccessible because of this ridiculous GDPR thing. This looks like it's going to be even worse. People need to sign up if they're in Europe, contact their MEPs, and get this vote.
That's right. That's right. They are killing
the internet.
You're right, Paul. They are killing the internet as we know it. I got to do 5 more minutes with you about solutions because I ran over earlier because I'm so upset. I want you to specifically, when we come back, talk about what we need to do to stop this. But I'm telling the left and everybody else, people like Joe, who I absolutely love, the fact that they're trying to destroy me, they admit is a plan to destroy everybody. I want to be clear here. Obama and George Soros, it's in all the WikiLeaks, wanted full control by the EU and the UN of the internet. You can just type in, Soros wanted the UN to have full control. Obama kind of split the baby and has it divided up between Silicon Valley, the CIA, the NSA, and the EU. But the EU's launched a bunch of lawsuits, hundreds of billions of dollars of fines just in the last few months against Google and other Silicon Valley groups who they're partnered with. So there's a real global war for the internet going on right now. But the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ADL, Snopes formed a consortium with billions in funding. I'm not kidding. A few months ago that they went public with, it was in the news, that updates the algorithms and decides what's hate speech and what isn't for Facebook, for Twitter, and for Google, and then its sub-companies like YouTube. And that's why then you saw InfoWars being banned, our YouTube channel being taken down. And then Bloomberg even had that article said, well, there was a mutiny inside YouTube. And they said the new employees they hired, went too far. That's because Google is actually seen as U.S. infrastructure and was set up by the NSA and the CIA. That's declassified. And Trump actually said, I will break you up if you don't stop. I'm not kidding. And it wasn't just me. It was thousands of conservative sites. But then they just kind of backed off a while and are now coming back again. Do you understand the magnitude? I'm telling you exactly what's going on. No one else has all the pieces. And believe me, I want everyone to have all the pieces. If Joe Rogan comes out at his peak right now of the #1 podcast in the world, I'm sure his peak will keep going, and talks about the plan to shut everybody off and congressional hearings saying ban Paul Watson and InfoWars. And what were they saying they wanted Paul banned for? I played this 100 times. I'm not going to play it again. Anybody can pull it up. They said, at lunch, we noticed Paul Watson's article from InfoWars was #1 on Twitter, lying and saying it was an Islamic attack in New York when the guy ran over everybody saying Allah Akbar. Because in their word mind, they go, that's not Islam. Remember, they said, it's the most un-Islamic thing you can do to suicide bomb or stab or blow somebody up. Remember? Obama would say that? Biden said that? Yeah, there's the article. Video, dim lawmaker demands Twitter censor InfoWars. It's Paul Watson specifically. You got the heads of Twitter, Facebook, and Google sitting there, the actual technical heads, and they go, sir, we saw it and took care of it. We saw it and took care of it at lunch, but the algorithm will be in a few months. We're here, and it's crazy town. So it's big tech and the big telecoms and all of them, and what did they say 3 months ago in the Wall Street Journal? They said, we're about to shut InfoWars down. We're about to kick it off YouTube, and when we're done with him, it'll set the precedent. We're going to ban everybody else from the web and make it like cable TV again, like Netflix. Paul, this is it. This is historical. I want you to be able to kind of recap everything here and then what people need to do to take action. I think they need to recognize how draconian and real, and finally the left realizes that they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. They're blowing holes in their own boat. That I see all these articles finally going, oh my God, it's the end of the internet. It pre-bans everything, and it allows a template over all browsers before you can even type something, just like your smartphone doesn't let you type cuss words, but to the next level. I mean, this is a real moment here if the libertarians and the left and everybody else goes, wow, Alex, wow, Paul, you were right. This is really happening, and InfoWars has been chosen as a sacrificial lamb. I don't care about InfoWars at the end of the day. I love seeing people prominent and successful. I don't want to be the only one fighting this. I want to beat these people. And I want the Joe Rogans of the world and people to get educated on this and realize what we're up against. Because, Paul, I keep bringing people like Joe up. If they don't understand how deadly this is, and the other conservatives and people play the game with the left to not go too far, they're just being left till later. And the left's going to be censored as well. This is already admitted. It's in the damn plans. They're ending the freedom of speech worldwide. Major universities are filing amicus briefs saying repeal New York Times versus Sullivan. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, the congressional hearing thing was about fake news. So they said, you know, Twitter was showing some fake news at the top of their hashtag, their trending hashtag, for the Islamic terror attack in New York on October 31st, where the guy ran down a bunch of people in a van. Okay, the article, the tweet that got to the top of the trending section was about how Imam Tawhidi, the Imam of Peace, sent a letter to Mayor de Blasio warning him about Islamic radicalization in New York. They said that was fake news, okay? The Imam posted the letter addressed to de Blasio on Twitter, so it was not fake news. Again, this is a thing that happened. I tweeted about it, wrote an Infowars.com article about it. They said, how on earth did you allow this fake news to get to the top of Twitter? It's a completely genuine news story. Again, another example of how fake news is used and abused. But this Article 13, okay, part of it is a link tax. The Article 11 part is a link tax. So anyone who uses a snippet of journalistic online content, so that could even be a quote or it could be a tweet, they would have to get permission from the publisher and they would have to pay a tax. So it essentially outlaws the entire business model of news aggregation and news apps. So it's only going to affect everyone but the biggest, hugest corporations.
And it devastates free flow of thought and discussion that's been defended under all jurisprudence. It overthrows basic communication and puts digital gatekeepers in between you and the free flow and creates a new superclass of mega media that is exempt from all of the rules and allowed to data mine.
Yeah, this is what the Next Web describes Article 13 as. They call it censorship machines will make platforms responsible for monitoring user behavior to stop copyright infringement. It basically means only huge platforms will have the resources to let users comment or share content. So it's going to stop you from uploading content, and it's going to stop you from leaving online comments. I've talked about they removed the comment sections. Now they're just going to ban comment sections entirely off the back of this. You know, you're talking about memes, you're talking about you know, music that people upload, music covers, whatever. Games, you know, live streaming of video game playing is one of the biggest things on the internet. That would be banned. That would be a copyright violation. So this is not just about politics. It's not just about censoring the right wing. It's about censoring control of personal behavior, preventing people from expressing basic internet rights, from enjoying basic internet freedoms. This affects absolutely everyone. This isn't just political, which is why, you know, PewDiePie talked about it in his video recently. People can go to saveyourinternet.eu. There are 10 MEPs voting on it tomorrow for every different country in the EU, basically every major country. People in those countries can contact their MEPs. In fact, anyone can contact them. They don't need to be in the European Union and tell them to vote against this, because if it gets out of committee, then it's probably going to be passed. And at the moment, it looks like it will. So we're sounding the alarm bell on this. It happens tomorrow. Visit this website, fill in the form. It's easy. It's basically done for you to alert them that they cannot vote for this. It will fundamentally undermine, break the fundamental structure of the internet, how the internet works. This is the biggest threat to internet free speech basically ever from what I've seen, and it needs to be shot down.
And Paul, let's document why it's happening. The EU's in full retreat. It's unelected, the bureaucracy. It's flooding Europe with over 10 million military-age men already. The public is waking up. They're being voted out everywhere. Soros admits it's all collapsing. The globalist left is collapsing here. People are leaving universities like the University of Missouri, 25% down the first year, another 20% after that. They've lost almost half their enrollment since they turned it into an open-air re-education camp. And so they're all in total panic. Evergreen College banning white people, you know, on the campus on the weekend, run by white professors. Everyone is rejecting this. Prosperity's coming back. The economy's turning around. Trump is hitting on all cylinders. And so their answer is break the internet, kill the internet, scorched earth, panic. I believe this is going to backfire and blow up in their face, Paul.
Well, I mean, you could only hope that that's going to happen. But yeah, people are rejecting the EU across the board. Look just what happened in Italy. You know, a five-star movement that came from nowhere. It was an internet-based political party. They started it on the internet. It was mainly online for most of its term. It became the biggest party in Italy, joint with the Lega, the anti-immigration party. Now they're in power. They've got a coalition government. They want to deport 500,000 migrants. They're turning away the migrant boats, which aren't full of refugees. They're full of economic migrants. They've changed the policy overnight in Italy. There's hope for Italy now. And that all started online with the five-star movement. So, of course, everything's going to be online in future. You know, UKIP just got 10,000 new members in 12 hours because a bunch of YouTubers, I was included in that list, told everyone to join UKIP because it was the only party defending free speech, and because Brexit's basically, we're being betrayed by the Conservative Party.
And let's just say it, Paul.
We're going to relaunch UKIP as well.
And let's just say it. Some of the smartest brains in Europe want you to run for office and want you to lead a major rebellion, and we're going to have to get over there and draft you for that. We're on the march. The empire's on the run. I didn't plug any this hour. We need financial support. We have got huge sales going at Infowars.com. I've not launched new sales. I've been so busy fighting that the 50% off and free shipping still up. I'm not doing that on purpose. I have not launched new specials. Infowars store. It is the last day. I'm fixing it after the show. We'll have new specials. We've got to stop because a lot of these items are selling out. All right, we'll be back second hour with incredibly vital intel. Stay with us. Look, I only tell you this at the start of almost every segment because it's absolutely critical that you understand we know the enemy game plan. I have studied it. I have had thousands of guests on. I live this stuff. And the enemy just continues the same permutations. They try the same operations over and over again. And I've got their game plan. And they're angry I've got their game plan. And they're coming after us because they don't want us to continue to change the narrative from their fantasy land to the reality. And I can tell you the reason Trump listens to this broadcast and others do is because it's good background information and good group processing. Just like a think tank. InfoWars is a think tank, an on-air think tank. And my goal is human development, human empowerment, defending innocence, and defending free will. And that's all I want. I don't want money. I don't want fame. I want to defeat the globalists because I know they want full control of the species to do some really sick satanic crap, to play God. These are mad scientists. And they've got to be dealt with. Now, that said, I'm very, very frustrated. And I'm angry with a lot of people I know over the years who think I'm stupid because I'm direct. But I see all the Machiavellian stuff that goes on, and I see the so-called libertarian and conservative talk show host pay the piper, pay the fiddler, pay Charon as they kill freedom, as they pass the river Styx on their integrity, when they do the little snipes at me and the little discredits, but all in a backhanded, friendly way. That doesn't hurt me. That hurts everybody. That hurts you. We expose the world government. We expose their plan. We relaunch the Americana reboot. This audience, InfoWars, this think tank, our college of guests, of strong men and women who went against the propaganda, the programming, the peer pressure, the bullying, and have broken the will of the globalists. We've torn both arms out of their sockets and smashed their face in a fight. But they are still moving at us with zombie determination. And it has been all the people that think they're trying to win a popularity contest who ride on the coattails of those of us that expose the whole globalist paradigm and discredited the fake conspiracy theories, the pop culture conspiracy theories that were meant to discredit the real work we've been doing. We have popularized the return of America. We have popularized the reboot. And a lot of you have been Pavlovianly conditioned with operant conditioning, carrot or stick, that if you go along with mainstream media and you play games with it and you pay it lip service that you're not going to be censored and you're not going to be shut down, you are exactly who they're targeting. The globalists want full spectrum control of the culture. They want ugliness. They want stupidness. They don't want things to be funny. They don't want things to be happy. They don't want things to be free or open. And they don't want wide spectrum availability of ideas. And they're going to create a very centralized, dumbed-down system that'll make anything you've ever looked at in history seem free and open in comparison. Article 13 and 11 snuck into committee are the same stuff they had in TPP. I knew what it was as soon as I saw the articles, pulled it up. I pulled up the TPP documents. We've seen it all before. But this time, the EU's ramming it through. And our courts and Democrat-controlled cities are now taking orders from the UN and taking orders from the EU. When I watched local Time Warner TV this weekend for about an hour, something I've never done. Time Warner has local news in many cities. Something I hadn't done in years. It was unbelievable. It was UN functions in Austin. It was refugee functions. It was taking kids from their parents and, you know, giving it to same-sex couples. It was pure globalist propaganda. Angelina Jolie and how bad the Syrian government is and on and on and on. It was pure state-run crap, like I was in a dystopic movie. They can't have it where people tune in and see that and then tune in and can hear InfoWars or Joe Rogan or PewDiePie or Paul Watson. There's an article up on Infowars.com where 2.5 years ago, Drudge came here. It's only done in one other interview since then and warns EU link ban could kill Drudge Report internet freedom. He warned it. EU's Article 11 would ban fair use and possibly even links to news stories. It's worse than that. It's a Kit Daniels story. But it's worse. Article 13 allows big corporations to be given a waiver for data mining. So see, the EU's program of the GDPR is only for little people to shut us down, and you. It's so incredible, and now finally a lot of leftist organizations and groups get it and are freaking out. It's what was in the TPP that WikiLeaks leaked, thank God. That patriots in our own government leaked, thank God. That Trump pulled out of, thank God. Article 13 of the EU Copyright Directive threatens the internet. They are breaking the internet because they can't control, and they, in a last-ditch effort, realize they've already lost. It's kind of like the Terminator franchise. Skynet's already been blown. The globalist dehumanization, depopulation, eugenics plan is a horrible plan beyond Hitler's wildest fantasies. It's terrible, and global elites that are not psychotic are now fighting with other global elites and working with humanity and trying to activate humanity to go to the next level and make the right decision. And we've pretty much already on this path have blown their operation irrevocably unless they completely break the internet, end free speech as we know it, start a giant war, and just like night follows day, you can bet your bottom dollar. You can bet your boots, and I'm getting chills right now. Boy, when I start saying the absolute right thing, my subconscious, my soul just goes, lay it out. Woo! Endorphins hitting me hard. Whoa. My spirit is saying, has been mad at me lately because I'm not really saying the right stuff. And I'm telling you right now, whoo, okay, absolutely. Of course, that's what I meant this morning to come in here and first say. I just get distracted with everything. When they do this clampdown, the bioweapon's going to get released, and they're going to kill a couple billion people right up front. Before they were going to release a bioweapon that kills a couple 100 million real quick to scare us and get us under their medical tyranny control. No, they're getting ready with Disease X. They rolled out and advertised this year, and then notice it's shown up. There was 100 dead Chinese 2 days ago. It was 600 yesterday. Now they're saying 5,000 are dead. You know it's probably 50,000. From a airborne pathogen of bird flu that kills 38.3% of people. And now they're saying, actually, that was an early estimate. It may even be higher because other people have died now that they thought might live. Let me say that again. There's an airborne flu. The most deadly flus might kill 1 out of 1,000. This kills 40% of people. And when I put that out Saturday, when it was from the World Health Organization, people went on Twitter and Facebook, and the left said, shut up, Jones, you're a liar. Tell us about Martian colonies. That's something I never said. When your own families are in danger, you just all piled on because you get the fake dopamine hit. You get promoted on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube when you attack me. You become willing bots, even though the currency of promoting lies is like Zimbabwe notes. You can't buy anything with it. Just all this fake glad-handing liberal crap, attack everything I'm saying, tell me I'm a liar, when I'm telling you about an airborne flu that kills 40% of people, that's mutating even stronger, and if it gets out of China and starts spreading, scientists say could kill half the world's population. But, oh, that isn't important. You just say it's fake news when it's not. They're going to release the weapons as soon as they hit the internet kill switch. They hit the kill switch, they're going to hit us with bioweapons. Everything's coming back. The economy. A sense of worth, a sense of value in humans and workers, a sense of family. We've rebuilt China, set it up for the globalists to use it as economic leverage to take over the planet. Trump's giving a live speech as we speak. I was just watching him during the break. We're going to play some of it later. And he was just saying, it's over. The decision was made to shut America down. The decision was made to deindustrialize us. And we're not doing that now. We're not going to let people have 200, 300% tariffs on us and we have nothing on them. It's over. And I told you yesterday that Hayden and all of them are very scared. And then I saw a clip of him this morning from last night on CNN where he said, I'm scared. But not scared for the reasons he said. His voice was shaking. He's scared because their criminal activities by these technocrats and the incredible stuff they've been involved in is coming home to roost. And they're not as invincible as they thought. And their crimes are coming out in Congress, and it's scaring them. Now, speaking of that, you know what the diversion is. They're so scared in Congress, the Democrats are, that all of their illegal spying's coming out, that Comey ordered it, that Comey was caught lying before Congress, that the whole house of cards is coming down, that they are hyping the total hoax that Trump is doing anything different in the last 4 administrations or longer, that when you get thousands of people a day per sector and none of their IDs are real, or they don't have IDs, or there's unaccompanied children, a lot of them are unaccompanied, you know, under the age of 18, teenagers, you don't just throw them into general population when some of the roughest hombres in the world are coming up through Mexico. Mexico has over 180,000 people they say have died the last 10 years. A couple 100,000 are missing, and they've dug up mass graves all over the Mexico side of the Arizona, Texas, California border. They've dug up thousands of dead bodies, you know, just over one spot, the Texas border by El Paso. And a lot of them are women and children. I live in Texas. I read the local news. A lot of them have had their hearts cut out and are killed in rituals. That's finally hit national news. So I would cover severed heads being dumped outside the Tucson police station like 10 years ago. And they'd have liberal articles saying, Jones is lying, saying severed heads got dumped off, hoping you wouldn't go look up the severed heads. That's how much they lie. Now there's documentaries about it. And now everybody goes, oh, we all know that because their lie failed. You've got evil gangs feeding on Hispanics who are Hispanic, 99%. And there's no media coverage of it except for local news. But then you've got images where the media is there of 50 people being brought in, and some of them are 5, 6 years old, and one screaming, mommy, mommy at night. I remember saying mommy, mommy when my parents would go out sometimes once or twice a year so they could go out to dinner. They'd drop me off at the daycare. And I remember being 2, 3 years old crying, some of my first memories, saying, Mama, no, I don't want to be here at night. It was scary. I had to get over it. I had to learn that I had to stay at the daycare every once in a while so they could go to a party or go to a movie if they couldn't get a babysitter. And, you know, they tried to get babysitters, and they catch the babysitters smoking pot. I remember those conversations when I was 2, 3, 4 years old. But then they go in there, and I saw the lunches they have. It's better than our school lunch program. And they've got Nintendos, and they've got PlayStations, and they've got basketball and football and everything in there. And in Mexico, if they catch you in a crime, you got kids, they take your kid and throw them in a dirty orphanage. They don't go show that, do they? Waiting for your family to get down there. And half the time, Mexico then extorts your family coming to get your kids. Everybody knows that about Mexico. Show some of the food for TV viewers, because they show them feeding the kids the food. Looks light years better than what. Now show that food. Look how good that looks. The fruit, the rice and beans, the migas, all that. Look how good that food looks. If you're a radio listener, it's up on Infowars.com. Look how good that food looks. And then show us under Michelle Obama with all these scams to companies they worked with to what the school lunches look like. Show the horror of Michelle Obama's school lunch program. Just type that into a search engine. Click it. Remember how ugly and gross and sick those lunches were? Remember that? So we're going to do a video side by side today showing these lunches they're eating. Boy, I wish our kids in America in the public schools were getting food that good. No, that's what we get here in America. Stuff that looks like you'd eat it on a Mars mission. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, show some more. Just you got to go to Bing. Google doesn't work anymore. Anything, the reality base isn't there. I know Microsoft owns Bing, but it's still pretty fair. And it shows the bad stuff and the good stuff. Yeah, I mean, this looks like stuff you wouldn't feed prisoners. This is what Michelle Obama says you're going to eat. These are the scams. But then look what these kids are eating. Meanwhile, the left is acting like they're all dying. So how are they going to divert the criminal activity? How are they going to divert Spygate and Russiagate falling apart? Well, we've got video of multiple congressmen interrupting and violating the rules and bringing up the kids because they don't want any of this information out. So let's go ahead and go to this first clip where they are interrupting and jumping in and trying to block the discussion of what really happened. Here it is.
Oversight and Government Reform and the Committee on Judiciary will come to order. Without objection, the presiding member is authorized to declare a recess at any time. I am pleased, as I know my colleagues are, to see so much interest in today's hearing. As a reminder to our guests, the rules of the House of Representatives prohibit any disruption or manifestation of approval or disapproval of the proceedings, such as shouting. Disrupting the proceedings is a violation of D.C. law and the House rules, and it will not be tolerated, and this will be your only warning. Welcome, Inspector General Horowitz.
Mr. Chairman.
We will do our... Yes.
Mr. Chairman, before we hear from the Inspector General, I feel compelled to say something about a topic that is a more immediate priority. We have all seen the pictures of immigrant children ripped apart from their parents at the border. These children are not animals. Order. They are not bargaining chips. They are not leverage to help President Trump build his wall. They are children who have been forcibly removed from their parents in our name. Every day that they are separated from their parents is a day we do irreparable harm to their health and well-being. The United States should be better than this. We should not put children in cages. The minute this hearing adjourns, sooner if we can,
Mr. Chairman,
I hope
regular
that our
order.
committees can work together.
Gentleman from Virginia has requested regular order.
Delay.
The
Thank you, Mr.
gentleman
Chairman.
from New York has been given more time than would have been afforded the other side had we pulled something like that. So with that, we will welcome you, Mr. Horowitz, for what I think is a hearing on your Inspector General report into decisions made and not made in 2016. We will be in recess until the Capitol Police restore order.
All right, that's enough. So this is the circus. This is the circus. You've got millions of people being told, come up here. They don't stop in Mexico. A bunch of them get killed on the way. And then you got thousands of people getting picked up per sector. And we're just supposed to throw kids in with people who don't have any idea who they are. No, they get them in there. They find out who the child molesters are, the killers. They cut those out. And they get them back with their parents, usually in a few days. Instead, the Democrats under Obama did something new. They started just grabbing them, loading them on Democratic Party charity buses, and they just disappeared into black holes. God only knows. It's called child trafficking. All right, I've got a report that a group of intelligence agent people put together. No one's seen this report, and that is outside of Congress. And Jack Posobiec, of course, obviously, is an anchor with One America News. It's syndicated on all the major cable systems, reaches millions a day. And a frequent guest here, also naval intelligence. And the president's a big fan of him as well and follows a lot of his work. And Posobiec got a copy of this. It's not secret. It's all source, open source intelligence. But it's not been seen yet. And I looked at it, and it's got a bunch of stuff that might want to be secret in it. So I'm not going to show this to anybody. I'm going to leave it at that. And I think separately, I asked Jack. He, I think, has come to that decision as well. And that's why we got to be really careful around here, because I am drowning in intel. And what's crazy is it's such good information. I mean, how good our intelligence agency's information is really amazing when it's really from them. But when it's the media or the Democratic Party, you can invert it, like Tucker Carlson said last week. So Jack Posobiec's here. It's not a gimmick that I have free shipping store-wide and 50% off our best-selling products. And I keep saying it's the last day, it's the last day. I was supposed to come in here early in the morning and shoot new ads and come up with the new specials. I'm so busy covering news, and I'm the guy that comes up with the final ideas in marketing. I should probably advocate that they've been trying to get me for a month to come up with new specials. A month. Because we've depleted a whole bunch of our best-selling products, and some of it isn't coming in. A couple of products aren't coming in until October. Well, you don't want to run a sale so long that then you don't have it at the regular price. You sell it at a sale so folks see how good it is. And then, though, if you got a supply issue or you don't have more coming in, you go back to full price because you can aggregate that out and make bigger profit to fund yourself over the long haul because it's not coming in. So I'm losing money right now because we will sell out of Real Red Pill Plus, we will sell out of Brain Force, we will sell out of Super Male Vitality and X2 before I get more. Now, if I'd have stopped doing this about a week ago, this special, a lot of these would have gone into maybe September at least, another 3-4 months. Now I am losing money. So that's the best pitch ever, isn't it? Plus you fund the resistance to the globalist. You get game-changing products, just like our information so hardcore. Our supplements are hardcore. Our water filtration is the best. The air filtration, whatever the best rated stuff is at the best price, we get it, we sell it. InfoWarsStore.com. We have free shipping on all our best-selling nutraceuticals and a bunch of other items. But it's got to end today. That's my fault. But if you haven't taken advantage of it, for so many great products, it's all there. Keep saying final day for 3 days just because I just can't get my head out of information. There's just too much of it, but this is how we fund ourselves. We do have some new products that have come in, 2 new ones. I haven't cut ads for those. So that'll be the new specials tomorrow. 2 new great products we've got coming out. But these other specials are gone. They've got to be. Alpha Power. Sold out in a month the last time we ordered it. Super great, super strong. It's going to sell out again. It'll be months till I get it. I mean, so I have screwed the pooch, as they say, on this. It's my fault. And I'd probably have to just hand control over this fully to Tim Forget because it's just I continue to, to do this. So InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, or 888-253-3139. Jack Posobiec will be with us 15 minutes into the next hour. Then I'm going to get back into news so insane that I can't even believe it. But he can cover the waterfront, not just this report that's secret until now that was given to Congress, that was briefed. So we'll tell you as much as we can about the report. I'll just show the top of the document, and I may show some little pieces while we're here on air. But he joins us now. So Jack Posobiec, thanks for coming on with us, and good job and all the work you're doing there with the One America News.
Hey, Alex, thanks so much for having me on. You know, we had a big special this weekend, and one of the things that really came out and struck me with this report, and that report, and I've given you a copy of it, so you've now got it on your hands, and you correctly identified that that report is raw intelligence. That report is not stuff that's really been processed yet. There's a lot of stuff in there that may or may not reach certain levels that we're not willing to go into or not able to go into here on the news. But from what we can tell, just even from the very first page of it, the executive briefing that we've read, it lines up very much with something that you yourself reported in the first few hours of the Las Vegas attack. Then Congress was briefed on this. Congress was absolutely briefed on this. And that's where I got it from U.S. Congress, that this guy had an anti-Trump animus, that he started stockpiling. Stephen Paddock, of course, we know that he was stockpiling rifles after the election of Trump. They went back and they tracked this. He did some handguns before, but the rifles, he started stockpiling them immediately after or in the days after the election of Trump. He attacked that concert because he viewed them as Trump supporters, the country music concert. And this information has been given to Congress. I also have correspondence. I haven't released this yet, but I have it. Correspondence between myself and Congress and the FBI, where I can see, they sent me the documents that Congress has been asking and demanding the FBI tell them if they looked into this, tell them if the FBI even went in to looking into this situation. Did you investigate the fact that this guy was anti-Trump? Did you investigate the guns? Did you look into any of this? The FBI, as usual, is not responding to Congress, is not responding to their written letters, not responding to their emails, and Congress is starting to, frankly, get very frustrated with them.
So the bombshell here is that a group of intelligence agencies and other organizations, we're going to get into some of who the groups are here in a minute, briefed Congress on this, brought up a lot of intel that we separately have documented. We have this big data dump of raw intelligence that you've been giving because folks want this out, and that it did all point towards Paddock being extremely anti-Trump, which we've separately confirmed. So there you go. The FBI has buried the fact that this guy was an anti-Trumper. That there is bombshell and shows you how many layers of the FBI are still political operatives of the Democratic Party.
Well, what's interesting, Alex, is actually that, you know, we talk about how it's different layers, but one thing that I've been told in the course of this from my sources is that right after this happened, keep in mind that this is still when Andrew McCabe was the deputy director at the FBI, and I've been told that McCabe actually demanded to maintain operational control of the investigation from the 7th floor of the FBI in Washington, D.C., that he demanded to have control of the operation as opposed to the actual field office there in Las Vegas in the first place. So McCabe, the same guy that we know know is in trouble for his actions on the Clinton investigation, and then opening up the Trump investigation based on phony intelligence, the dossier. And now the same Andrew McCabe was involved in this essentially covering up or stopping the investigation into the Las Vegas shooter, not allowing investigators to investigate as far as they wanted to go. They essentially saw a dead body, said, we're going to pin it on this guy. This was the only guy involved. Case closed. Let's move on. They did not dig into all of the very damning evidence that this case was done for because of political purposes. This was a terrorist attack that was committed for political purposes.
And I've been scanning over this. It fits into what our intel was, what the hostage rescue team told me the day after. Major Islamic connections, other shooters, they believe, being flown in. Some of the teams didn't show up. People got cold feet, did tell people, get out of here, you're about to be killed. I mean, this thing is leaking like a sieve. I actually feel sorry for the sheriff. He's been breaking down on TV, you know, obviously ordered to under national security to not get into this by the FBI. But that's rogue groups in the FBI of McCabe and their stay-behind networks. But I'm reading this. I'm getting into some of this on air. The attack was likely planned as a logistically and finance coordinated entirely by Stephen Paddock. Paddock may have anticipated the arrival of a fly-in team of additional shooters that would assist in the operational execution. However, the team of additional shooters appears to have not arrived in the numbers expected. It was also possible that additional members of the cell had not yet reached Paddock's suite when the security guard triggered a perimeter attack initiation. And they've even got who they think the shooters are and names and video clip, everything in there. This is really bad, man. This is really sick stuff. And we're going to... the sheriff breaking down and starting to cry, saying there's obviously other shooters. It's horrible. The people who do, and then later he's like, no one, only one guy. So this, and they still won't say what happened. There's a new article up on Infowars.com and Newswars.com that needs to get out there. IG bombshell: Clinton was never subject or target of FBI investigation. Close quote. Remember, they said she was investigated, but they gave her a letter saying that she wasn't, and now it's confirmed again. We'll talk about that in the next hour with Jack Posobiec and open the phones up and get into Article 13, Article 11 that ends the internet as we know it. Even mainstream news admits it ends the internet. But I've actually read it now, the whole thing. And it's beyond that. I'm going to break that down coming up. And they're voting tomorrow. And the U.S. has been going under EU control. That's globalism. Jack Posobiec is in the studios there in D.C. of One America television network, and he was getting into this until now secret document put out by a particular intelligence group alumni organization. I'll just leave it at that briefed Congress, and then that way they can do it unofficially, as people obviously steal a lot of those agencies. And it's a pretty powerful info, but recapping and then getting into more of it, we have McCabe in control, deep state operative, ordering all this basically covered up, that the law enforcement believed Paddock had accomplices, and Congress has been briefed. So please continue with this information, Jack Posobiec.
Big question that everybody asked is, you know, the same questions that we were all asking early on, and I know you've covered this, you've had people on who have covered this, but Congress is now starting to ask those very same questions. They're asking it very quietly, but some of them have come forward to the surface, like Congressman Scott Perry. They've essentially been asking, why was this someone who had so many guns? Why did he have so many ammo that wasn't used? Did he do this all by himself? This seems like at least a two-man operation. That's what the sources are telling. And one specific thing they bring up in the report, Alex, is the timeline of this thing. Now, to take us all back, the firing, so he gets shot by the guard, or excuse me, the guard tries to come up, he shoots at the guard, then he starts the shooting. That's 10 p.m. that evening. He continues shooting until 10:15. At 10:15, there's that two-shot sound that we hear, and then the firing abruptly stops. At 10:15, no police officer or security guard had entered the room. Nobody had gone to the door. He had no external pressure whatsoever at 10:15 to stop shooting. In fact, the police don't actually arrive for almost another hour. They wait for the SWAT team to come. And the reason they're worried coming in, they saw that cart outside. They worried about IED. They worried, did this guy have a bomb rigged up at the door? It was set to go. So they waited for SWAT to come in and make that determination. So why at that point, 10:15, did he arbitrarily stop shooting when he had so many rounds left, 7,000 rounds in the room, when he had so many weapons in there? We know he had other materials, RDX, down in his car in the garage. We know that the airplane fuel tankers across the way, the jet fuel, that he was trying to shoot at those to take those out. He may have intended to use those explosives in his car to take out those jet fuel containers at the airport across the way. So why at 10:15, to bring it all back, does he just arbitrarily decide to stop shooting and end his attack when he clearly had follow-on operations? A huge red flag, and something that a lot of people in Congress are now starting to ask her questions about.
And of course, we know now the media never covers what happened. Never. They bring up every old shooting, constantly blame gun owners. They salivate over every mass event. But on this, when the Islamic connections and the gun running connections came out, they all dropped it like a hot potato.
Exactly. We've certainly seen from the left a massive program, a massive campaign, anti-gun campaign, certainly in the wake of Parkland and other shootings, that they've tried to use those shootings as political leverage to ban AR-15 specifically, to enact other gun bans. But after the Las Vegas shooting, you didn't really hear much other than banning those bump stocks. And bump stock to the shooter community is seen as more of a novelty. It's not seen as something that a serious shooter would ever use, because you can't really fire accurately with one of those things. So why is this never, it's not mentioned, it's not brought up in anything other than a list of major shootings is the only time you ever hear about it anymore. It was never used in these major campaigns that are pushed by the left, that we know the Parkland, the March for Our Lives was done by a George Soros-tied promoter with the Open Society Foundation. So why did they never talk about Las Vegas in terms of gun control? It doesn't quite fit the narrative for some reason, and we're trying to figure out what that is.
Because the operation went sideways, everything points at that. You've read this report. You got the secret report Congress was showed. Get into the group, the organization, because obviously they gave it to you. They don't mind the name being out. And then why you think they gave it to you, and just a summary of the raw intelligence that's gathered here, but a lot of it very, very powerful.
Of course. So Americans for Intelligence Reform, it's headed by Brad Johnson, who's a 25-year CIA veteran. He's someone who was, as we call, a white hat, if you will, someone who never really got involved with any of the black ops that were going on. He knew about them, but he always stayed true to his mission. He always stayed true to the U.S. Constitution. And now that he got out, he's someone who has taken on the role of something of a whistleblower in the intelligence community, a sort of role that I find myself in occasionally, talking about what he sees the intel community doing now and calling against it. So they put this report together. He's the face of it. There are other names that are involved, certainly many, many names that are involved, but he's really the only one that's willing to come publicly, because a lot of these guys do still have security clearances. In some cases also do cleared work as well for the agencies or contract work. So you're seeing the website right there. So Brad came on with me last weekend in OAN. We produced a 30-minute special. We're just essentially going through this report, going through what we were able to verify. And that was the anti-Trump sentiments. That was the stockpiling of weapons after the election. That was, perceiving the crowd, perceiving the target as Trump supporters. There were other indications that we didn't get into in our special report that are covered in this. And one of those big ones is the one that you heard Congressman Perry talk about 6 months ago on Fox, that there may have been an ISIS connection, and was certainly brought up earlier on when we know that ISIS took credit for the attack. However, no one was able, the question that a lot of people had was, this guy Paddock, he wasn't able to be tied to ISIS. So everybody was asking, what is the ISIS tie if this guy wasn't able to be directly tied? And that's where the girlfriend they were thinking may potentially come in due to her international travel, the money being sent overseas, the fact she was overseas but seems to have had foreknowledge of this. And the FBI, to some extent, is investigating this, but to another extent is really trying to hold that main narrative of this guy doing the entire thing by himself together, even though we've even seen indications in some of the police reports that the police are investigating whether or not multiple associates were involved.
Well, I was told by folks involved with the FBI hostage rescue team who were there that there was all this foreign travel stuff, that they'd both been in the Middle East, that they thought it was some type of gun running deal gone bad. And then the FBI came in and shut it all down a day after. But we told people that the next morning. I got the information, then I got to go ahead to say it on air. because there was a cover-up going on. And now you see all the evidence pointing towards that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in terms of that. Unfortunately, because these guys are on the outside looking in for a lot of these things, they're only able to use the information that they get in terms of, just like with you, someone tells you something, points you in a direction. We don't have access to the same databases, law enforcement databases that the FBI would, and they're not making any of their findings public. They certainly have only released tiny tidbits of information regarding this thing, only small portions.
Oh, they're really hoping it just goes away because they know what really happened.
Yeah, they don't want us talking about this. They don't want us bringing this up. They want it to be doled out in little drips and drabs, spoon-fed to us. They don't want us looking at this as people who are intelligence veterans, as people who were in the shooting community, who understand how terrorism works, and to look at this through the lens of counterterrorism, which is something that they certainly see. Maybe not international, maybe more enacted domestic terrorism in at least the case of Paddock. But was there supposed to be more is a big question that now the real breaking news on this is that Congress is starting to ask these questions as well.
All right, Jack Posobiec, we're going to go to break here in about a minute. But when we come back, I want to get into the Inspector General report. I want to get into the children being held who are coming across the border, many times unaccompanied. So, of course, people in detention centers are being put in separate areas. Of course, there's a chain link fence. This is a thing that's gone on for decades. But how the liberal media thinks we're so dumb that we don't know what's going on. And then the big enchilada. I knew this was coming. I knew they were talking about it for years. We had Drudge in studio warning of it. Copyright laws that put prior restraint on everything you type and do on the internet, that totally control everything you do, that ban memes. And even liberal news sites are admitting this is horrible. Well, I'm glad you finally figured that out, morons. They're going to censor everybody. This is unbelievable. We'll be right back with hour number 3 to break it all down with Jack Posobiec and more. Newswars.com, the global site. Hope you don't share that link. Let me ask investigative journalist, national TV host, naval intelligence officer, Jack Posobiec, and more importantly, married now with a new baby. Congratulations on that. What would you call this period in history? Because I think Trump really is turning the corner. I think we're starting to win. The globalists know that. They're collapsing all over the world, but they're just striking back with naked race baiting, naked censorship. And I think if we don't take this serious enough and don't politically strike back to this authoritarian activity at a proper level, that they could capsize our operation. I mean, I really think that we need to, their desperate activities need to be met very, very seriously, because these are really a Hitlerian level authoritarian activities we see, but really a Maoist model with the big corporations and the communist Chinese and mainstream media, the universities, all working to demonize and bully and overthrow speech and call for violence against police. I mean, this is a real attempted overthrow of the country, overthrow of Europe. I mean, we're in the middle of a global civil war of nationalists and patriots against the globalists, and I don't think enough of the public really realizes how epic it is.
Yeah, Alex, I've referred to it, I would almost call it a revolutionary epoch that we're in right now. I've also one of my good friends who was a source on that report actually referred to it as, he called it global gang warfare. He's like, you've got the gang of people who are on the side of creating these multinational corporations, these multinational organizations, the financing that runs through them. And then you've got the smaller gangs of people that are in each country just trying to fight for the rights of their people and for their citizens, that are now starting to rise up and say, you know what? We don't need massive global markets. We don't need massive global movement of people, open borders, the migration, because we've seen how terrorism is able to use that. We've seen how in the case of the U.S. border, the open borders, that child traffickers and smugglers are able to use loopholes and exploit those networks. So there's so many problems that come with us running down this road of globalization that we've got to fight back against it, because we've forgotten about people in all of this. We've forgotten about individuals that have gone on with all of this. And the fact that obviously, as the president pointed out this week, that certain cultures are just not compatible with each other if you try to import them immediately. And Europe is seeing that, certainly seeing that very hard right now. And in certain parts of the U.S. border, we're starting to see that as well.
And Jack, that's very astute what your colleague said. And I want to expand on that, because the globalists admit they're creating the tension to collapse the nation states and the wealth to vertically integrate it towards total social control. So it's not just like, oh, the globalization's causing some problems. They're directing the problems like high-powered water spray, you know, to strip mine hills. They are cutting through the strata, the good, the bad, and the ugly, because they want total consolidation, total control, and it is an organized system. Yeah, you've got global gangs fighting with each other for hegemony, but they agree on the basic programs of social engineering. You look at the Chinese Communist Mao operations that they did in their universities. Well, they're trying to duplicate that here. It's not communist. It's corporately directed modes of authoritarian communism that have worked, but only in the revolutionary period to then turn it over to global corporations, which was done with China to begin with. So the larger understanding of that paradigm is now what's brought us into this giant awakening from which the globalists can never reverse their decline, because their plan was totally based on stealth, and now, obviously, that stealth is gone.
Yeah, William Craddock over at Disobedient Media, he uses a great example. He talks about how the Europeans and Angela Merkel are using the migrant crisis to now push for a European national military force. That's something we've never seen in Europe before. They're pushing for it, and they're using the migrant crisis, which they created, as justification for it.
And then they're going to use the military force to deliver all the people into the countries anyways.
Right, and now we've got new national military forces. We've talked about national police under Obama. Same tactic. It's by design.
We'll be back with Jack Posobiec on the other side. He's on fire, ladies and gentlemen. Newswars.com, Infowars.com. Spread those links. The globalists hate it when you do. All right, Jack Posobiec's with us with One America Network, investigative journalist. I want to get into this giant hoax that the Democrats are running for the midterms, and obviously to distract from Spygate. So obviously, I don't want you to talk about both because they tie into each other. And we're sitting here looking at all this, and they're following decades-old policy. There's no news coverage of the hundreds of thousands killed trying to come into the U.S. in Mexico. They don't tell you that they can't just throw little kids in a general population. These people are committing crimes. If I rob a bank, they take my kids from me. If you come in illegally with no ID or you have a criminal record, yeah, you're going to lose your kids. They're going to get sent back to your home country, back to the grandparents, back to whatever, or you're going to be sent back with them. You have to do this. When you come into the border, you come into a checkpoint, and they sit there and ask you questions. And if it doesn't check out, well, then you go to a holding area until you're shipped out, until they find out who you are. So the fact that the media is full tilt pushing this, and you've got Hayden with all his illegal spying and criminal activity trying to say that Trump is like a Nazi at Auschwitz with these kids, and the Democrats and their grandstanding, when it's the UN caught running giant child kidnapping rings and sex traffic of women, when it's Mexico that's doing all of this, these other countries, and then they're only focusing on us, trying to stop collapsing Latin America, collapsing into us, with the UN openly running all of this. I mean, it's just insane that they're doing this, and I don't think it's going to be very, very effective. What do you think's behind all this, and where do you think it's going? Because I look at Democrats who push to get every baby they can aborted. And then I look at them under Obama, stop detaining the children, which have been going on for decades, and to start just releasing them to aid groups, Catholic charities, other private charities, Democrat charities that have been caught in smuggling of kids, you know, Hillary's people. And so that violating federal and state law, I don't believe the president had the power to do that. Clearly impeachable. I called for him to be impeached. We broke that they were doing it 4 years ago in McAllen and other places. And the New York Times said, yeah, hundreds of thousands of children, people under 18 down to age 3, are given many times unaccompanied by parents and just given tickets and just sent to Chicago and Houston. And some of them ended up dead, sex trafficking. It's been in the local news. And it's like, what? Kids show up at the border? You just put them on buses with private groups? No record? They say that Obama was giving them dates of 2 years, 4 years to show up for a hearing, as if a 12-year-old knows how to do that. This looks like a giant cover to me for a huge underground railroad of children going into the big bellies of the Democrats and their penchant for children. What do you think's happening, Jack?
Yeah, Alex, we've got a situation, and as Secretary of Homeland Security put it out yesterday, 10,000 of the 12,000 that are here, 80% now that are being in these shelters, and that's what they are. They're shelters. Um, those were brought without parents, without anyone even claiming to be their family. So they are the victims of child trafficking by any definition. What the difference is that Trump is putting an end to it, and he is actually stepping up and having the leadership to try to do something about this situation, which was created by his predecessors, the Clintons, the Obamas, the Bushes, and their policies, who either did, at worst, did nothing to fix it, or possibly even let it go on, as we saw with Obama in 2014, putting kids into these foster systems where they ended up going into the hands of child traffickers. And that was the Washington Post that reported that. That was not exactly some kind of far-right group, the Washington Post. So we've got a major situation here, a border crisis that obviously the president talked about on the campaign trail. It was the main issue that he ran on. And now that he's trying to do something about it, that he's dealing with it, that he says, hey, you know what? Maybe we've got this Walmart that shut down on the border. We can fix it up. We can make it nice. We can give them some money. We can have the kids there, give them 3 squares a day, give them beds, have everyone there. But the left wants to come in and complain about it and scream about it, because what are they actually doing, Alex, is they're actually shutting down this system that was in place beforehand and are dealing with the issue in a way that's based on law, that's based on following the laws that are on the books. And we always said that. How many years did Republicans even say this? That all we need to do is follow the laws that are on the books. You know, we even have a law on the books for a wall that George Bush signed, but he never actually did anything with. So it's amazing to see what happens when you actually try to follow the laws. And you can really tell, it's very telling when you see the Bushes, when you see the Clintons, the Obamas, and now CIA directors all coming out in alignment against this. It's so revealing as to who they are. It's so revealing as to what side they're on. And to Hayden, well, I would just say to his comment, this certainly isn't the first time that the CIA has used domestic propaganda on the American audience.
And I saw Hayden again last night on CNN.
Oh, parading him.
He's being paid by CNN. He's like, I'm scared.
Well, because Clapper has been discredited, so they bring out Hayden now.
Yeah, Hayden. I mean, it just makes my head spin that Hayden's out there listening who the good guys are, Clapper and Brennan and Mudd. Mudd goes on CNN and says, we're going to kill the president.
And Mudd is someone who's threatened the president using absolutely atrocious language. He's talked about threatening. We've now seen there was an Antifa group just yesterday that was saying you should, if you see an ICE member, that you should not only find out who their family is, but that you should use violence against them. They were saying kill members of ICE. Now, these are people that work for the Department of Homeland Security. And I don't think people realize this, but a lot of those Customs and Border Patrol people are Hispanic. They do speak Spanish. A lot of their families are Hispanic. They are immigrants themselves that are trying to help this situation legally through points of, legal.
And they understand that Mexico is a failed nightmare state, and below it are countries that are even worse. What type of insane person would let the UN and George Soros get migrant trains and to get Mexico to agree to give them passage? Mexico puts you in forced labor if they catch you illegally. But now
Mexico, they were accused of torture just last year in some of their detention centers for Central American migrants. They were caught. Torture, sexual abuse. This was coming up. There were Reuters.
Yeah, that's the London Guardian. Type in.
Yes.
Yeah. What they do is they torture women, particularly until they have family come and basically give them money. It's unbelievable. But notice, Jack, they never humanize these people.
You're right, because that's how they're viewed. They're viewed as, the Democrats view them as free votes, and certain members of the Republican Party view them as free workers. Well, the problem is, what's going to happen? Let's say that we do open the borders and we do start this mass importation. We go along with it. Alex, what's going to happen in 10, 15 years when automation kicks in and all of these low-skilled workers, the day laborers, those jobs just aren't being done anymore?
Perfect welfare recipients. Perfect welfare recipients.
Exactly. It turns into a giant welfare crisis that's going to be on the backs of who? Hardworking Americans that are going to see their taxes skyrocket because they're going to have to pay for all the people that were brought here that have jobs that the robots are all doing now.
This is a total nightmare scenario. And, of course, what we need to do is what Trump's doing, jack up the West and then actually try to develop the third world. But
this isn't 100 years away or 50 years away. This is 10, 15 years. It's coming. We're seeing the automation already happening.
I agree. Jack Posobiec, I want to do one more segment with you, and I want to get into this other development, obviously, with the massive censorship being announced and being pushed in a big, big, big way through the EU. A lot of folks think, oh, we're exempt from that. We're not, because of the current agreements, and Trump needs to do something about this regardless. The EU is already out of control. Before they even tried to pass something that even liberal sites and major professors say will end the internet as we know it. They're trying to break the internet. You know, I'm quite a history buff because history's so interesting. I've studied a lot of different sectors of history, find it just amazing. But to be living through it is even more incredible. And if you really look at how authoritarian the left is, and if you really look at how anti-American, anti-free speech, anti-free market monopoly pushers are, you realize that we don't have any choice but to fight these people and to expose them and to take back control of our civilization. I mean, I look at the lies and the deceit and the nastiness of CNN, MSNBC, and they know what they're doing. And a lot of their own constituents know it's all a lie. They think they're going to get free stuff out of this, maybe for 5, 10 years more, like Venezuela, then we collapse. And the people running it always live in Switzerland or Kauai, Hawaii, or Lanai, you know, own their own islands. They're never part of the collapse period. And then they come in 10 years later after the collapse and buy everything up and put fascism in. And the media then never covers it again. And it's like, what happened to this country? What happened to that country? And the globalists have now decided to do the same thing to the West. And then the technocrats are all going to live on private islands. That's the decision. That's what's in major publications. They even tell you. And then you watch Gruber on TV famously on C-SPAN, a group of professors teaching them how to lie and how to deceive. And they're all looking at him like he just, you know, saved a child out of a burning building. They're like, really? That's how we do it? That's how we get better jobs? You got these academics, you know, that want to be big men and women, and they literally are practicing evil. And it's that realization that globalism is a world government of corporations above the law, just like in Article 13 and Article 11 of this new EU piece of garbage. And they're doing all this, and it's all happening. And they say they want to break up our families. They say they hate Christians. I mean, I just don't know how they found so many bad people, Jack Posobiec. Can you speak to that? Or maybe you think I'm wrong? And then what's going on with the EU censorship and the EU systems that, because of Obama and others, we're signed on to these things now. I think it's time for Trump to really take the gloves off and say, we're not following any of your EU regulations, none of it.
Well, Alex, the EU is still working to respond to the actions of what took place with Brexit, with the Trump election, with the elections of governments in Poland and Hungary and Austria and Italy now. They are in full panic mode because they see that people are standing up for their countries, they're standing up for their individual liberties, they're standing up for their freedoms, and they realize that everyone is using the internet, social media, digital connections, digital connectivity to break the sort of master narrative, as the Obama administration used to call it, to break that, to tell the truth about what's going on, and to vote in new politicians that support the rights of the people rather than the rights of these, as you put it, these global multinationals. And so what they're doing is they realize that if they can put restrictions on the internet, that's the last chance they have, in their mind, of holding together the EU. But I got to tell you, if this goes the way it looks like it is, they are going to see a massive backlash, an absolute massive backlash to people putting censorship on the internet. They're talking about the links and copyrights, and that, you know, you're not allowed to link to sites if they don't allow you to link to the sites. This is something that is the backbone of the internet, is the websites linking to each other. It's certainly something that everyone's.
And let's be clear, it's even worse than that. They just put in this whole GDPR thing where every time you go to somebody's website, you got to click and say, I accept every time, even if there's not even cookies on your site or whatever. But that's only for little guys with their big fines. They exempt all the big corporations that opt in and agree with them and say that they have exemption as right holders and are allowed to data mine. So it allows total surveillance of everything for the big tech giants, But then all the little Lilliputians, we can't do anything.
Right, and that data mining, that's being used to sell your data, to sell your internet behavior, your interests, what you're looking into, what you're searching. In some cases, if you have Alexa or Google Home.
Oh, yeah, Zuckerberg went over there and worshipped the authoritarian EU, and so they're now giving him and Google carte blanche. They think the tech giants will now go along with this.
Right, and Bezos is a big part of this. Microsoft is actually, Alex, I just got off the phone right before I got on the program today, but I got a source that's saying that Microsoft is a big pusher in a lot of these things. And while Bezos and Soros and other Silicon Valley giants have been really keyed out, but people don't realize that Microsoft is pushing it just as much.
Oh, so he's behind the TPP. In fact, I keep saying who's the worst? Is it Tim Cook? Is it Bezos? It's definitely Bill Gates. He's the little evil elf lurking around in the bushes.
Right, he loves us talking about Bezos and Tim Cook and everyone else, because while we're doing that, we're not talking about him. This is someone that, remember, the U.S. government went after them for monopoly and couldn't even do anything about it in the 1990s when we all knew what Microsoft was doing. Now they've taken that, they're taking their money, they're turning it into these operations. And remember, Gates was doing this well before Bezos or Cook got into it. So he's really been spearheading a lot of these different things. They're going to start it with the EU. They're going to break down what people have seen as the internet in terms of free content and free expression, free connection. They don't want that to happen anymore. And so they are putting in limiting guidelines and regulations to stop it from happening, to stop people from making those direct connections.
And Jack, you just said it perfectly. And I can't even believe that they're this brazen, because finally a bunch of leftist publications and leftist legal groups are going, oh, this is horrible. This ends free speech. If they talk about in here templates, and folks, they've already got it. Like when you're typing something on an iPhone, it's a cuss word, it says you can't say it. It's beyond that. Just like, well, you can't, upload that copyright song. Even if you've got the rights to it, you can't do it to YouTube. It's prior constraint through the algorithms, through the AI. Well, now they're saying they're going to basically ban memes. You've got to send the memes through a university process group that literally is a consortium of Snopes, Southern Poverty Law Center, ADL, funded by George Soros. This is in the news. This is not my opinion, ladies and gentlemen. That then in the browser or in the publishing system to a website or into online systems, under law, they're going to fine you. Even here in the U.S., they're claiming the power under globalism, just like with their whole GDPR system. That's the camel's nose under the tent flap of the regulatory control. They say that they are going to then restrain you where you can't even post the quote. If a newspaper quotes somebody saying something, the quote of the say the Pope saying open the borders or whatever, that's copyright and you can't have it. But the key is the prior constraint. It's an internet kill switch built in to the uploading devices by law.
Yeah, this is going to completely change the way we're able to interact with the media and with the internet in itself. I'm waiting for my, the reason I don't want to get one of those Amazon smart refrigerators or something is because they want to, I don't just want to wait for them to say, oh, well, you had so many calories yesterday, so now we can't open the refrigerator because you've got to stick to your, your daily ration, your daily quotas or something. Or you said a bad word the other day, so we can't let you
Jack,
open the
they
door. Actually
say that in the training videos in the UK in Megapolis. It shows refrigerators in the future like that. Do 5 more minutes, because I want to talk to you about, because you're a military guy, about the 6th branch of the military, the Space Force, and what Trump is really doing with that from my perspective. Talk about it all on the other side. All right. I want to get Jack Posobiec's take on the Space Force. And I know he's a smart, well-read guy, naval intelligence, you name it, investigative journalist. But, I mean, I know what's going on with Space Force. And I did a 20-minute video, live video last night on it, the secrets of Trump's Space Force. The truth is, there's been a Space Force since the 60s. NASA is just a cutout for U.S. military operations in space. And just like the Navy's got aircraft and the Air Force has got aircraft and the Army's got aircraft and the Marines have aircraft, all these branches have space assets, whether it's satellites or other stuff. And they've got these non-nuclear, but there's SABO around, orbiting platforms that they've got up in space. They've been placing them since the mid-70s in space. And there's a big need for a Space Force just to service these things and remove them and stuff like that. Usually they just fire them off into deep space when they become derelict, because you can't bring a depleted uranium platform with projectiles back into the atmosphere for reentry, because they don't break up, and they would heat up and get unhooked and then become the meteor gun they were designed to be. But the only reason I can talk about that is they accidentally declassified some of that in the 90s. Then I talked to one of the former heads of Star Wars. But that's a long story short. Trump said, we're going to unlock the secrets of the universe. There's been a lot of suppressed stuff. He said that at State of the Union. And so medical treatments that they know are near cures that have been suppressed, things like that for terminally ill people, then that'll allow testing on them for everybody else. They're volunteering. The left says you can commit suicide. You can abort your baby all day, but if you want to risk your life, oh, no, you can't. You can't, because they're anti-progress. They are the anti-progressives. So they had decided on an anti-post-human world. Elon Musk has warned about it. The post-human world. Post-human future. And Trump also said he wants to unlock the mysteries of space in that same speech. So he's just letting you know it's already there. And then to start rolling out some of the technologies and some of the things. And it's also a carrot to the military-industrial complex, which I'm totally for if it's done for peace process, because here's the deal. All this innovation we have came from space program and military programs. And if you got a good president and a good government that deploys it back to the people, we're already decades ahead of China, Russia, you name it. But not if we hold on to it. So he wants it deployed to the people and not put it into just wasteful, you know, more aircraft carriers or more divisions of troops, but into stuff that really does things. And like Google satellites, those are really the geospatial, you know, government satellites. Deploying that back to Earth and absolutely taking our secret space program and boomeranging 50 years ahead of the Chi-Coms if we do it now. So Trump's only announcing, I love it, my idea for the Space Force. It's all a big joke with him, because a good joke in that he's been briefed on all this. He's been brought in. There are people that want a human future. This is about humans in space. And it's not going to get innovated with the fake 10% NASA, you know, space rovers and stuff. China's moving into space. Others are moving in. Let's just be honest that we have space superiority. So they can be crushed, just like Reagan did with Star Wars. So superior. Obviously, they were offensive weapons. The Russians knew they had to give up. Okay, so I've given you the real deal. That's really what, and we'll get Posobic's expert take on that. But it's about a human future. It's about a military budget that actually develops the new high-tech systems that are the civilian future. And not just these useless military things that just sit there and are only good for the defense contracting companies. So it's a very, very smart thing Trump's doing, in my view. I think Space Force is an excellent name for it. And I don't know if the Air Force is still going to have Space Command, because for those that don't know, Space Command really already is a separate brand and branch of government above the other 5 branches. I wouldn't really count the Coast Guard. They're great people, but that's more of a patrol thing. That's my research view on that. Jack Posobic, what do you say?
Alex, well, obviously I can't talk to classified programs, but I will just say that if the president so chooses to make some of these programs unclassified, reveal them to the public, I think the American people are going to be pleasantly surprised and very proud of their country. And I'll just leave it at that. What this has to do on the, at least in the first aspects, you're absolutely right, that all branches of our military have operations that touch space, whether that be satellite, even weather in some cases, GPS, other communication satellites, collections platforms, our intelligence forces obviously operate many satellites up there. All of those are in constant threat from Russia and China. And China and Russia have been operating space forces for years. The Russians started their space force in the 1990s. China started their space force a few years back. They're completely open about it and realizing that space in and of itself is a completely new field of warfare. And
it's a whole nother dimension. It's like the fourth dimension. We've got to be honest about it. Go ahead.
It's going to get to kinetic warfare. The Chinese have looked at this already. They've looked at laser warfare for taking out our satellites. They've looked in space from other space.
Well, let's just say it. They've already been using particle beams to destroy our satellites.
Destroy or disable, yes.
Go ahead. Keep going.
And they've demonstrated the capability of rocket shoot downs from surface launch missiles to go after space. So our own infrastructure, our own payloads that we're sending up into space, as well as everyone who uses communications or geopositional satellites here on Earth, it runs the risk of the Chinese or the Russians getting into this. So this is all about China and Russia, number one. And what it's also going to come to, the one thing that I think that you were just about to mention it, is materials extraction, mining, essentially, whether that's done on the moon, whether that's done on asteroids. People are looking at Mars. They're talking about the space ladder or space elevator. People realize that the mining that can be done out there because of rare earth elements and other rare elements, there's indications that these may be found in either the asteroid belt, passing comets, many different other locations in space that might even be easier to extract.
That's right, and humans will deploy to do research, but then we'll have big robot processing systems that go out and get these critical ores and bring them back. It's a total revolution of new elements.
And they need to be defended. Our assets need to be defended out there, not just from other companies, or excuse me, other countries, but potential other private interests that may go after them, that may attempt sabotage, corporate sabotage. There's all sorts of things that need to be opened up.
And since you raised that, because Musk wouldn't go along with the Soros takeover, I now have credible info. He is being sabotaged in the news, but also at their plants right now to make Musk roll over to him. That's a sad thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with Musk right now. Everybody wants a piece of him, and I think what's really happening is that Musk is saying, I just want to be myself. I want to be independent. I don't want anyone to own me. And he's realizing that there's so many people out there gunning for him. I hope that he does go back with Trump. I hope he does realize that Trump offers him a way forward to be independent, but also to be protected from some of these other people out there. But yes, you're absolutely right that if we want to expand in space, if we want to expand both as a people, maybe looking at colonization at some point, or even just for mining and other commercial operations, we're going to need defense platforms. We're going to be able to protect all of our investment, all of our interests that will come out in space.
Well, look, space is the final frontier, and we already dominated it. And so why quit playing games? I mean, it's time to be honest, like the president said he'd do, and he's doing that, and go, okay, we're not really paying $2 billion for each of these fighters, or $3 billion. It went into this. Here, let me show you what we had in operation in the 80s. Here's the big V-wings. Here's all this. And then the Chinese and the Russians and everybody else will just know that there's such superiority that it just...
A lot of this is where the UFO stuff came from. A lot of this was these experimental planes that were being tested here on Earth.
Absolutely. And so the word is Trump's going to start releasing a lot of stuff. Is that the word you've heard?
I've heard that as well. But he had always heard about it, and now as he's become president, he wants to explain to people that this work has been going on out there. And as I've said, the American people are going to be very, very proud of their country when they see that what the best and brightest have been doing, at least in quiet.
Wow. So you agree with my analysis of Space Force then?
I think Space Force is something that's been long in the works, and it's been long necessary. I don't know why we play games about it. It's clearly out there. The other countries obviously know we have it. It's time for the American people to know what exactly.
Well, you know the real reason. It's just the death toll so high with the volunteers. That's why they've kept it secret. Word is thousands have died in the secret space program. Jack Posobiec, thank you so much. God bless you. Final segment straight ahead before Paul Watson takes over with critical news on the end of the internet. And I am gushing about Trump, because my gut told me he was good, and then everything he's been doing has been very truthful, very honest, except for bombing Syria and keeping troops in Afghanistan. And on that front, he's now got a ceasefire, and I was told, no, he's going to build up to make him come to the table and then actually give him some good deals per tribe and then pull out. And then now the word is that's where this is going. We'll see. And then the Syria thing, I understand they were going to make it look like he was involved in a chemical attack if he didn't strike him, and it becomes like a white false flag, I guess they'd call it, but I still don't like it. But he's not a dictator, and I don't want him to be a dictator either. But people complaining about Trump and saying it's like Hitler and Auschwitz. But let's play that Hayden clip. Then I'll play this Drudge clip. It's just panic. I said yesterday, Hayden is scared. He came on later in the day and said, I'm scared. But see, what they do is they'll take something true and then twist it. I've watched Hayden. Oh, and he's a really bad guy. Head of the NSA and CIA. I've watched that slime ball really screw this country up. And now all his cohorts have been caught in illegal activity against Trump, so he's the last one they're trotting up. And he lists the co-conspirators in this clip we're about to play. And then he says, I'm scared because Trump's undoing all the things we've done. You mean like putting an unelected EU in that exempts itself from taxes? Oh, you mean like shipping in 10 million military-aged men into Europe to rape, murder, and kill everybody? Oh, you mean like letting all these countries have 50, 60, 70, 100, 200, 300% tariffs on us? Because you weird globalists, the average East Coast person is great. The average West Coast person, I love them all. But let me tell you, in the elites of New York and LA and San Francisco and Portland and Seattle, they hate black people, white people, Hispanic people, everybody. They're elitist. And they hate flyover country, and they hate farmers, and they hate ranchers, and they hate anybody they don't control. They're just maniac psychos who want full power. And history shows that's the types that tend to get in control during collapse periods. Well, Trump's like, hey, let's just not do the collapse period because the globalists wanted an austerity period after long collapse to train us all to accept the new social engineering. And you see how horrible the social engineering is. They're still going on with the plan even though Trump's in. So you got two competing plans. But at least our plan has gone from nowhere to pole position in 2 years globally. Well, yeah, we're promoting prosperity, space travel, life extension, real freedom. You want to have sex change? Good, go chop it off. I'm not paying for it. And it's not because I can't handle how delicate it is that, you know, you're some obese 300-pound man that wants to cut his genitals off. It's disgusting. You need to be in a mental institution. But I'm a libertarian. Long as you don't hurt somebody else, blow that head off if you want. I'm not saying do it. But before you try to teach my kid to cut their genitals off to join your sick cult, get out of the way. You know the fetishes they've got? I'm going to do a report on this soon. They've got school teachers and academics all over newspapers coming out. And don't show it. I'm not ready to do it yet. So I'm going to show a bunch of them together with weird stuff about sex with kids in the background. But you got to blow up the images. And it's unbelievable. It sent chills down my spine when I was in Hawaii, and it was sent to me by a researcher. And it says, I like pizza all over the place. And you just look at these people, and it's just like, ugh. So you have to understand, it's a psychic vampire. It wants to ruin the innocence of children. And you're like, well, it doesn't make sense. Why? It's spiritual. They are like succubus in old legend that sit on your chest and steal your breath at night. You know, that's an old wives' tale. Or, you know, cat steal your breath. You know, and they'd be making biscuits on your chest. The cat really thinks you're its mama, and it's the way it, you know, shows affection. So it's pumping milk out. But old timers thought, oh, look, the cat's on your chest stealing your breath. It's not like that. It's whatever this psychic thing is though attracted to the innocence of children and wants to dominate them, control them, ruin them, kill them. But it's a continuum. There's always like these weird blob, Renfield-looking guys that look like Dennis Hastert. The suppliers always look like Hastert. Then you've got kind of active Renfields that are the middlemen that produce the child snuff films, and they look like the guy that just got caught murdering little girls and little boys and torturing them to death. And the Australian government wasn't going to prosecute him. So he got caught in the Philippines. King of the pedophiles is what I called him. Eyes wide shut ceremonies with these women where they rape and torture little girls, where they beg for mommy and then they strangle them. And stuff I'm not going to even mention on air. You look at him, he looks just like Jimmy Savile. So there's like 3 or 4 types. And at the top, it's a Dracula type. And they've got a certain look in their eye and a certain affectation of how they operate. It's a spirit. And it's like a program. It's like a spiritual program. And I've learned to recognize it now in certain people. In royal families, there's one that's got the look that is one of our prominent patriot leaders now that's been shoved on us. And when I finally learned to just go with that, then it's like boom, and you look into it, it's exactly that. It's like they've got a look, folks. I mean, it's like police are driving down the road and they go, look at this guy. They go over and the guy's got stolen loot and weapons and, just murdered some old lady. It's like a craziness. Like, you can tell some guy that's just into being evil and likes to do bad. He's kind of got a spirit about him. It's the same thing. You learn these types because the spirit in them manifests as a look. That's why I act evil sometimes and behave like them just to show you what they look like. And the media uses that against me because I can kind of pick it up and do it. I can't really do the Savelle. Pull up the guy in the Philippines convicted of torturing and murdering little girls. I forget his name. Sully. And you look at him, he looks just, pull him up. And in his frontal shots, he has the exact leering demon look and laughing about it in court. Peter Gerald Scully. And he looks just like Savelle. And he's the intermediate level to full Dracula. Full Dracula. And you look at Prince Philip, pull up Prince Philip, please. You're talking full Dracula. And, of course, he is related to Dracula. He is a direct line of Vlad the Impaler. His son now lives in Dracula Castle in Romania. About 6 months out of the year. They don't see Charles much anymore. He has special relationships with the local orphanages. You look into it. It's all open source. But Philip is full Drac. And when I say that, I don't mean he's a reptoid from Planet Pop-Tart. I'm telling you, his son, oh, my God, it's unbelievable. That do not show. Was that mainstream TV covering Daisy's destruction? Good God. I just can't handle it anymore. 60 minutes. Okay, we can show it. Just I want to make sure it's not anything online. I want to explain something to the vampires. You like to hurt little kids? I don't like hurting anybody, not even like I stepped on a gecko. It hadn't happened in like 15 years. I was in Hawaii, a little baby gecko, and I stepped on him. And I felt really sad for the little gecko. Went in like 5 a.m. to take a, little pee-pee. And there it was. Pull up the new articles about him, the direct line of Dracula. They're not even a German royal family. They are a Romanian, Hungarian bloodline of the house of Dracula. That's the dragon. And they are the real live Dracula. And, of course, you know what they tell you in old England and old France, everywhere. They said, don't get near the castles at night. And they've dug up so many dead kids on the grounds of their palaces over there. And Prince Philip's best friends with Jimmy Savelle, who had torture chambers of little girls. And he ran a necrophilia society at the local hospitals where they went and had sex with the dead little girls. And he would then deliver the little girls. They all had different specialties. I remember hearing about this before it ever came out in the news. One particular prime minister, he liked little girls, but he just liked to see their throats slit. He didn't even, he would relieve himself while watching a little girl. They'd lay plastic out, and they'd walk the little, about 7-year-old girl was his favorite. He liked them with black hair and blue eyes. He'd pay a lot for those. And then he would say, your mommy's not going to help you. No one's coming. Let them cry for a little while and beg. And then he'd say, do it. And they'd let them bleed out. And he would just go, Lucifer, I love you so much. And, just like Tony Blair said, he falls down in the morning in a newspaper and is possessed by the spirit of light. And he flops around uncontrollably. Just remember the next time you're reading in Vice or Salon or the New York Times that pedophilia is not bad, that they're actually good people, that the ones you hear about are the procurers of the kids. At the bottom of the rabbit hole is the torture and murder of them. And you see that more and more in the news, thanks to Trump and others moving against it, because Australia, the U.S., and others would not prosecute the actual Satanism stuff. But remember, Prince Philip says he wants to come back as a deadly virus to kill 80% of the world's population. He wrote that in the foreword to a book and then was quoted again in the Audubon Society. Then his son's best friend was Jimmy Savelle, the child kidnapper and torturer. And they are from the direct line of the House of the Dragon. And in Romanian or Hungarian, that means the dragon. The good old dragon is in charge. I thought George killed the dragon. No, you've got the dragon in the house. So they ought to just change it from the unicorn and the lion over there in the UK to the old dragon. The old dragon. Now, that said, with these people walking around above ground in front of us, I said I don't want to hurt a fly, except people that hurt children and innocents. Then I have a rage and a great strength And you look at the satisfied look in the people that torture little girls, sometimes for months, little boys, while they beg for mommy. They call it using them up. They transfer the energy, they believe. And they're always into devil worship, but the media always leaves that out. But I've had top psychiatrist on. Who's the lady? I want to get her back on. She's the most famous psychiatrist. She's the lady that interviews all the serial killers. She said, no, you're right. I put that in my books, Alex. It just never gets on the news. That they all believe that they're possessed and that the devil does this. But they never feel good except if they're hurting somebody. So a lot of your abortion doctors are Satanists. And this has come out. So this is all about understanding the energy, like, Duracell inside or Energizer energizes the bunny. You need to understand what's inside these folks. And you've got more and more publications, just telling you need to accept it. And of course, the UN accepts NAMBLA and says that down to age 5, children should have their own rights to have vaccines, to take drugs, whatever. And so the school teaches you that you want to, date a man or a woman when you're 5 years old, that they can come with a box of chocolates and flowers and tell your parents, I don't care if you don't want your 6-year-old daughter to go out with me, a 300-pound, pedophile. You're going to let her go with me. And you're like, well, she'll never do that. Well, once she's indoctrinated at school and taught all about it, that's how that works, ladies and gentlemen. So this is already going on. They're coming for you and your family. They're coming for you and your children. So I thought I'd let you know why they want censorship while this is happening. Paul Watson's going to take over. He's got the latest on Article 13 and Article 11 that end the internet as we know it and extends here into the United States. And the fact that finally the left is hearing the alarm and getting upset. So there's some big moves and a lot of big news coming up on the War Room today as well. Infowars.com. Newswars.com. They're trying to block us. I didn't even plug last hour. Maybe I did. I don't remember. No, I guess, I did. No, it was the hour before that with Pasobic. I have not done a new special. That's why it's still up there. Free shipping on all the best-selling supplements. 50% off on X2, Brain Force. And that's not a good thing because they're close to selling out. It'll be months in some cases till some of these products come back in. And I'll have new specials tomorrow on some new products we've got that are excellent. But this has been a big special. So take advantage of the fact that I have not changed the special, but it will happen because as soon as I'm off the air in 34 seconds, I will march in there and we will get the new promos and stuff ready, and you'll see those new ads tomorrow. But you cannot underestimate just how evil the globalists are. We did a flashback on Drudge being right. Drudge warns EU link ban could kill Drudge report internet freedom, and now 2.5 years later, it's here. Go see Drudge, warning you from his high-level government sources, and now it all coming true. Will you stand for freedom, or will you let the satanic global armies of the dragon silence you before they have their way with you? We'll be back with Paul Watson from London.
Donald Trump came out yesterday, and you may or may not have seen this quote. He said this: the United States will not be a migrant camp, and it will not be a refugee holding facility. It won't be. You look at what's happening in Europe and other places. We can't allow it to happen to the United States, not on my watch. Now, of course, he came out with other comments, tweets regarding Germany, talking about the crime problems related to mass immigration in Germany. The media then pulled a little stunt, as they usually do, by claiming that crime has not gone up in Germany. Now, you can look at some indices and say that generally crime hasn't gone up over the past 2 years, but that's not what he was talking about. You're talking about violent crime. If you're talking about political crime, and if you're talking about crime committed by migrants or refugees, as they still insist on calling them, then it has gone up. We covered that in depth yesterday in an article entitled New York Times Smears Trump Over Migrant Linked to Crime in Germany. But he's right. And we had the screenshot directly out of Reuters, headline, Violent Crime Rises in Germany and is attributed to refugees. That was Reuters.com, not Infowars.com reporting that. They reported that Germany suffered a 2-year increase in violent crime after the first migrant wave. It rose 10% in both 2015 and 2016. 90% of that increase was attributed to, quote, young male refugees. We also had other stats out of the German Federal Criminal Police Office, basically the German government, which show that the crime rate has risen, the violent crime rate has risen 23.7%. This is crime committed by migrants between 2016 and 2017. So crime committed by migrants rose by 23.7% between 2016 and 2017. Another study by Zurich University, again, that's not Breitbart, that's not Infowars.com making up statistics. Zurich University of Applied Sciences found that migrants, this is in Germany, are responsible for a 92% increase in reported violent crimes in Germany during 2015 and 2016. Now, Newsweek, Reuters, BBC News, PBS, they all reported on this back a few months ago, back in 2017, back in 2016, with headlines like this out of Newsweek. Migrants in Europe linked to soaring violence and crime in Germany, study finds. That was Newsweek. That wasn't Donald Trump claiming it. PBS, crime spike in Germany puts pressure on immigration policy. BBC, Germany, migrants may have fueled violent crime rise. Bloomberg, Germany must come to terms with refugee crime. Okay? So the mainstream media reported that across the board because it's a fact. Violent crime and political crime has risen drastically in Germany over the past 3 years, and it's almost exclusively 9 out of 10 attributed to, quote, refugees or migrants. So basically all Trump did, his big egregious crime, was to not put the word violent before the word crime in his tweet. He actually did say that Germany's culture had been changed violently as a result of mass migration, and that was completely accurate, backed up by major university studies, backed up by government statistics. Oh, but the New York Times said he was lying. The New York Times said President Trump attacked Germany's immigration policies, falsely claiming crime was up there. So because he didn't specify that it was violent crime, which of course is the worst crimes to be on the receiving end of, he's a liar. No, he's not a liar. You're deliberately misleading your readers to try and frame it as something else. Germany is having huge problems as a result of the migrant wave, and Donald Trump is right to take the position that he doesn't want that happening in the United States. That's one of the reasons why he was elected. Now, we see what's happening in different European countries. We see what happened in Italy, where they turned away the migrant boat last week carrying another 600 plus migrants, the Aquarius rescue ship, rescuing people 10 miles off the coast of Libya. Again, it's not a rescue service, it's a taxi service. They bypassed the first port of call. Under European law, you have to take, quote, refugees to the first safe port. That first safe port was Tunisia. Now, Tunisia isn't going to give them 500 euros a month. Tunisia isn't going to give them free healthcare. Tunisia isn't going to give them benefits. So did they go to Tunisia? No. Well, imagine my shock. They went straight to the first country where they thought they could get the most rewarding benefits, the most rewarding welfare system. They tried Italy. Italy said no because it actually has a government that represents its people. So they went to Spain because Spain just got a new socialist government and they said, come on in. They rolled out the red carpet. And what happened within 24 hours? Well, here's the headline out of Infowars.com. Spain, students forced out of their homes to make way for migrants. Citizens given 24 hours to leave because, quote, the migrants come with many illnesses. So basically the ship docked in Valencia, which is on the Costa Brava in Spain. The migrants were dispersed throughout the general region. Some of them went to Alicante, which is about 2 hours away from Valencia. In fact, my parents live not too far from there in Spain now, in a different city, but close enough. So they got hundreds of these migrants. They sent them to Alicante. And the people who were living in student accommodation in Alicante were told directly, pack your bags. You have to leave within 24 hours. 24 hours, they were told, even though they're paying for their accommodation. They've signed contracts on their accommodation. These are European citizens, in one case a young German man, kicked out of their houses to make way for migrants who had just turned up on a boat literally the day before or the very same day. Now, this was reported in a Spanish newspaper, and the mother of this German student, this was numerous different students, you see the infamous footage of the boat arriving in Spain where they just all pour off and just run into the town. Absolutely insane footage. Who these people are, nobody knows. We've got ISIS threats against Spain. We've got an ISIS attack that happened in Barcelona less than a year ago.
And Paul, if there's any kids with them, according to the Democrats, they should just put them out into general population or let the kids just disappear with them. That's what Trump should be doing, because there are kids sometimes, and the government should just let whoever these random folks are with kids not even be checked, right, Paul?
Yeah, but Alex, there was an audio tape of a kid crying. Doesn't that mean we need to erase all our borders? Come on. Have a heart. Have a heart.
You're right, Paul. I apologize. I'm like Trump. I guess I want him to be in concentration camps. I'm sorry.
There was a tape that a child cried. Come on. That means law and order doesn't exist anymore. Come on. Have some common sense. So the mother of this German student came out and said that the reason they were told they had to leave their accommodation, paid for accommodation within 24 hours, because they were being replaced by these migrants, and because the migrants had illnesses and they didn't want them to catch the illnesses, which is a complete excuse because they're landing them in the middle of a busy tourist town. I've been to Alicante. It's a bustling tourist town. Okay, so they got hundreds of migrants. Oh, but you might get infected by all these illnesses. God knows what they are. Yet they're putting them in the middle of a tourist town in student accommodation. So it's not some kind of refugee camp that's on the edge of the town away from everything. It's right in the middle of the town. And they were told, pack your bags and get the hell out of here because you're being replaced. Now, this is not the first time this has happened in these different European countries. In fact, we had an infamous video a couple of years back, you'll probably remember it, of an old Italian man who owned a guest house, a little bed and breakfast house. There was footage of the police basically bussing in this group of African migrants. And they're all from, Eritrea, Nigeria, Sudan, all these African countries. Almost all of them aren't at war. And they're not even economic migrants. That's what we're going to get into in the interview. But they're certainly not refugees. They're not Syrian refugees. They're coming from African countries. And the citizens in these European countries that they're landing at, going into port at, they're being told to get the heck out of there. There you see the footage. This is an 80-year-old Italian guest house owner.
But, Paul, that's okay. The old man that had his place taken and thrown on the street, well, I mean, and all of his customers, it's okay. He can just write an article about it online. Oh, I'm sorry, the EU's about to ban that too, and I know you're going to break that down as well. Riveting transmission with Paul Joseph Watson from our London bureau, straight ahead as he knocks it out of the park yet again. Please spread the live links to this transmission and tell people about the local station you're listening to.
We're live on the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. Before we get back into the news, I want to tell you about these great specials at InfoWarsStore.com because we're under sustained attack. We talk about it on a regular basis. It's lawfare. It's happening virtually every day now. They're trying to shut us down. If they can't throw certain people in prison, they'll try to shut them down financially. We're not vulnerable to boycotts like a lot of people because we rely only on you getting the products, and you've been fantastic with your support for such a long amount of time. And we still have the Deep State Special running, which is 50% off a lot of your favorite products, including Survival Shield X2, Brain Force Plus, the Real Red Pill Plus, Silver Bullet Alpha Power, Supermel, and Super Female Vitality. These are all 50% off with free shipping. Stock up now. You can go and check out the 5-star reviews at InfoWarsStore.com. Again, we really need your support to thrive and to expand this network. You've seen what we've done with it to the point where they're having congressional hearings saying that we have to be shut down. We're being hit with lawsuits on a regular basis because it's part of this wave of resentment from the left, from the establishment that has really picked up since the election of Donald J. Trump. And it's because they hate us. They hate our influence. They hate the fact that we're independent. We're not beholden to checks from George Soros. We're not beholden to advertising payments from Gulf state dictatorships like CNN. We're only beholden to you, our viewers, our fantastic viewers who've supported us through the years by getting the products at InfoWarsStore.com. 50% off, free shipping. That special is not going to knock around for long. In fact, this is the final day. This is it. Final day of this special. 50% off all your favorite products with free shipping at InfoWarsStore.com. Now, before the break, I was talking about the migrant crisis. Of course, Trump referenced it yesterday and said that's what he doesn't want happening in America. People literally being their homes being requisitioned to be replaced by migrants who are fresh off a boat that same day. Imagine that happening. Well, it's happening in European countries right now. We had another story about a hospital on the Italian island of Sardinia that was ordered to kick out local patients in order to make way for migrants. Finally, Italy's got a government that's saying no and standing up to this invasion, which is basically what it's become. The German government, in Berlin, they had a 10,000 homeless population, yet we're spending 18,000 euros per year per refugee on housing them in upmarket hotels. I mean, Spain's got a huge unemployment rate, right? Their green economy failed. They've still got high unemployment. And yet these migrants just arrived fresh from African countries, free housing, 495 euros a month, benefits, welfare, free healthcare, and basically sticking the middle finger up to their own population. Meanwhile, in Germany, this went up on Infowars.com just a short time ago, Germany, migrant who murdered teen girl bragged about everything being free, no need to work. This is the Iraqi migrant. We had a video last week from the German parliament where they tried to do a minute's silence for his victim, Susanna F., who was raped and choked to death by this individual, this Iraqi migrant. This is a 14-year-old girl we're talking about. They tried to do a minute's silence for her. The leftists in the German parliament basically heckled and started shouting and shut down a minute's silence for a 14-year-old girl raped and choked to death. Well, the Iraqi migrant who was responsible for that murder and then tried to flee the country, it's been revealed that he now bragged about how easy it was in Germany while he was still there. Bashar evaded prosecution for the horrific crime. As we said, he fled the country. But according to his relatives, he would often brag about how good he had it in Germany, not having to work, benefiting from generous welfare payments, and receiving, quote, a salary from the state. They said they were doing well in Germany, a cousin of Bashar told a newspaper. So he had it great. His family had it great. Then he murdered a 14-year-old girl. They had to flee the country. They've got this guy back. He's going to be charged. But again, this goes to the root of the problem and exposes the lie that Angela Merkel brought in this refugee wave on, which was that they need to supplement the labor force. Okay, it's a fact that the population of Europe, the native population, is basically dying off because nobody's having kids. So Merkel said, look, we need these migrants. We need fresh bodies. We need a workforce to pay taxes and to fund social welfare programs, or they're going to collapse. So, of course, we need to bring in millions of migrants from the Middle East and Africa. Who's going to do the crappy jobs? Who's going to pay the taxes? Well, it turns out that 3% of the migrants who came in on that initial wave actually got jobs. In fact, in Germany now, out of all migrants, it's 50% are on welfare. So, no, that doesn't happen. They don't come in and work. Some of them do, and good for them. In fact, we've seen in a lot of countries, in Sweden, for example, hardworking migrants who build businesses and hire employees actually get deported quicker than criminals in some cases because they messed up on some technicality on their application. We've seen that in Sweden many times. But in terms of, oh, we need a labor force, no, the statistics just don't bear it out. We've seen in Sweden, 58% of welfare payments go to migrants.
So what's the end game, Paul? What's the plan? Why are they doing it?
Well, they're doing it to replace the population, essentially. I mean, what did Macron say? He said we need to import 150, 200 million Africans into Europe over the next 30 years. So it's a replacement, and it's basically going back to feudalism. They're not even going to vote, most of these migrants. People say, oh, they're going to turn them into great voting blocks. Most of them aren't even going to vote, maybe a couple of generations down the line. But again, it's about total domination. It's about dependency. They want a population that's dependent and will never challenge their power monopoly. And they're quite happy to replace the existing population while claiming to be great humanitarians.
Exactly. What they really are is like in Escape from New York, where they put explosives in his arteries, where he doesn't follow orders, they can just detonate them. Or Baron Harkonnen in Doom, in the film remake, has a heart plug where you can just pull the heart plug out on somebody and kill them. They're a giant group, 90% aren't going to be allowed to work, who anytime the globalists don't like what the public's doing, they can be activated like they do routinely in England and France to burn down major cities. So they're being brought in by the globalists as a terror detonation switch that they can activate through the leadership anytime they want, Paul.
And the point to make is that, Alex, we're always demonized as being inhumane and heartless for opposing saving refugees. Well, who's incentivizing the refugees to come in the first place? Thousands of whom have died on these boats, drowned to death. The incentivization is coming from the criminal people smugglers working with the NGOs and these leftist governments. They're to blame for people drowning at sea because they wouldn't make the trip if they weren't promised safe welfare havens. It would not be happening.
Well, the NGOs are funded by Soros publicly and the UN. They run it.
The other point to make is that the migrants coming across from these African countries are predominantly what would be treated in those countries as middle class. So it's also a brain drain because they're the only ones who can afford to pay the people smugglers to get in the boat in the first place. So we're actually harming the countries that they're coming from because they're losing people who do actually work, who do have jobs, in some cases skilled jobs. So it's harming those countries as well as harming Western countries. So all down the line, the consequences are bad for everyone.
But it's okay because J.K. Rowling has taken 1,000 refugees at her London home.
Yeah, that didn't happen. She had 18 spare bedrooms. I counted them up. No refugees taken thus far. But we're going to get more into it after the break with our guest talking about the migrant crisis. This is the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show live. Breaking news at Infowars.com. We'll be back. We are live. It is the fourth hour of the Alex Jones Show. We don't have much time to go, so we're going to jump straight to our guest. She is Alessandra Bocchi. She's here to discuss the migrant crisis and Italy's fantastic new populist government. She's a freelance journalist, and she's worked in Libya and seen the origins of the migrant crisis firsthand. You can find her at Alessa Bocchi on Twitter. Alessandra, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Now, we're going to delve more into the background behind the migrant crisis, going to zoom out, and we'll talk about Italy if we get time. But starting with this breaking news, which I touched upon earlier, the Aquarius rescue ship, 600 migrants it was carrying along with some other ships. It was turned away by Italy. It didn't stop in its first port of call, which was Tunisia. Gee, I wonder why. But Spain's new socialist government allowed the ship to dock in Valencia. Tell us what happened in one area of Spain where some of these migrants from this ship were sent.
So, yes, so these migrants were sent to this small city called Alicante in Spain, and they basically occupied a student building, but legally, this was sanctioned by the government. And this student building had students who were paying rent, like 750 euros rent per month, and they were evicted from this building. They were given, I think, 1 day notice. And these migrants were sent there because apparently they were afraid that they had diseases. And so they sent them to this building, but it doesn't really make sense. And this is the center of the city. So if these migrants really do have diseases, well, first of all, why are you letting them in the city? But also, why are you letting them in the center in a student building? It makes no sense.
So these students, they paid for their accommodation and they were basically told 24 hours, you're out, right?
Yes, there was one student who gave his testimony, a friend of mine, Cesare Sacchetti, he's a journalist who reported on this. He was given 1 day notice, and he was there for a summer program to learn German. He had a job waiting for him in November in Germany, and he was evicted from his home, basically, or his accommodation.
Yeah, we were rolling a video earlier out of Italy, and this was a couple of years ago. It was an old man, horrific video, chilling video. He owned a guest house, a small guest house. It was basically his own house. They bussed in migrants, the police did, and basically said that they were gonna requisition his property. Here you see the clip. House these migrants who just turned up in a van. And this old man, this poor old man was saying, do you want to put them in my apartment too? There's actually reports that he had suffered some kind of heart attack as this incident ended. Absolutely harrowing. We had Germany spending millions housing migrants in Berlin hotels while, they had 10,000 homeless people on the streets. Spain's got a huge unemployment problem right now. A lot of these European countries do. Why didn't this boat stop in Tunisia? What do you think the reason for that was?
Well, according to international law, any rescue operation in the Mediterranean, in this case it's with migrants, should go to the closest and safest ports, which in Libya's case would be Tunisia. However, they're bringing these migrants to Europe. They've been doing this for years now against international law. They pick up these migrants 12 kilometers from Libya's shores, so it's not even a rescue operation. They've been found colluding with the smugglers before. They literally pick them up from the smugglers' boats and put them on their NGO boats, and then they transport them to Europe because they're not concerned with saving lives. They actually are open border extremists, and they're willing to do everything to bring these migrants into Europe. This is their aim. It's not about saving lives. It's not about taking them to the safest place. It's not about respecting international law. It's about bringing as many migrants as they can to Europe.
And we're going to get into why that is shortly, but you've worked in Libya. You've seen this firsthand. Many quarters of the media are still describing these individuals as, you know, war-torn or poverty-stricken refugees. You've seen it on the ground. Is it really accurate to describe the people that are getting in these boats that way?
No, it's not. Actually, in Italy, according to government statistics, only 8% of the applicants, which, by the way, are just a portion of the overall migrants, but 8% of those who have applied for asylum have been granted refugee status. So 92% of those who have applied are not actually refugees, and they're economic migrants. And so we hear the argument that, okay, well, they're not escaping war, but they're escaping poverty, so we should accept them anyways. That's like a justifiable reason to accept them into Europe. But really, they're not escaping poverty either. That's a big lie. I mean, some of them may perhaps, but it's a huge human trafficking network, and it's planned and it's organized. It's not spontaneous. People are coming all the way from Bangladesh. How does one come from Bangladesh into Europe? It makes no sense. They are being lured by these human traffickers who sell them a false dream of Europe. And they're doing this to the middle classes of those countries who can afford the journey, obviously. The poorer segments of those society cannot afford the journey. It's an expensive journey. You have to pay various human traffickers and militias in Libya. And so it's the middle classes from these countries, and it's actually hurting those countries because they are losing a lot of their human capital and potential, and it's also increasing corruption and sort of the black market in those countries.
Yeah, it's a brain drain. If you've got the middle class of a country leaving, then that's only going to harm that country in the long term as well. So it's not really benefiting anyone. Now, we're always lectured, on the right about how inhumane we are for opposing the rescue of, quote, refugees. My question, is it more inhumane to want to maintain the integrity of borders and law, God forbid, or is it more inhumane to incentivize these journeys that are guaranteed to end in death for thousands of people? Who's being more inhumane here?
Well, obviously, if Europe didn't have open borders in the first place, these people wouldn't be risking their lives for this journey. There wouldn't be a human trafficking network to incentivize these people to make this perilous journey. So it's definitely the fact that there are open borders. That's the main reason why these people are risking their lives for a false dream, may I add, of Europe, because they get into Europe, they can't find a job, there are no jobs. There isn't enough welfare for Europeans themselves. And many of them, yes, die in the Mediterranean. So it's really a tragedy.
And we have stories like the one out of Germany today, obviously huge problems with crime. We had the murderer of a 14-year-old girl fled the country. They got him back in the end. Now it's coming out that he was bragging about how great everything was in Germany. They gave him money, they gave him welfare. So we're going to talk about that as well. But looking at Italy, obviously you're Italian. We had the success of the populist government recently after they tried to override it with a technocrat. We can talk about that. The Financial Times, the globalist paper of record, described this coalition as barbarians. Was the vote in Italy a reaction to just the problems caused by mass migration, or was it a wider rejection of how the EU has worsened the country economically?
No, so what the English-speaking media, I think, or the establishment media has failed to address, in part because Brexit was mostly driven by migration and there wasn't really an economic problem as much there. But there is a huge economic crisis plaguing Southern Europe, which has been largely ignored. And it started with Greece a few years ago, and the Troika, meaning the European Union, the International Monetary Fund, and the European Central Bank have imposed these austerity measures on Southern European countries for them to pay back their debt, basically. And, Greece voted against those austerity measures, but they imposed them nonetheless. And it's really what is also ignored is the fact that the EU is dominated by Germany. And right now it's a project that is serving Germany's interests at the expense of Southern European countries like Greece and Italy. And the European Union, as well as Germany, thought they could ignore Greece because it's a relatively small country. It doesn't have as much power to really stand up for itself. But with Italy, they cannot ignore the crisis any longer, because if Italy is out of the European Union, I think the whole project would collapse at this point. Italy is a founding member, so they're really quite worried now. And what struck me was that Jean-Claude Juncker, the president of the European Commission, actually admitted, he said, we're not going to treat Italy like we treated Greece. So they openly admitted that they've been treating Greece terribly. And they're not doing that.
We'll be back. Hold that thought, Alessandra. We'll be back. This is the 4th Hour Live, Infowars.com. Don't go away. It is the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show, and we are back with our guest, Alessandra Bocchi. She is at Alessa Bocchi on Twitter. She's a freelance journalist talking about the migrant crisis, talking about the rise of Italy's populist government. And on the subject of Italy, Italy's native population is in decline. It's basically the same story all across Europe. Fertility rates generally are dropping. Now, how do you respond to the claim? Because this was a claim that was made by Merkel and others at the outset of this latest wave of mass immigration, that we need to import migrants so they can supplement the workforce, pay taxes and fund these social welfare programs that may otherwise collapse. Alessandra, don't we need these people? Because we're dying out. Don't we need them to replace us and to work and to pay taxes? That makes sense, right?
No, actually, that makes no sense, because most of these people are not working. They are their lives are being paid for by the government with EU funds, by the way, and they're living in these. At least in Italy, it's a bit different, perhaps in Northern Europe, but in Italy, they're living in these large cooperatives, and there are these sort of camps, migrant camps, where they have everything paid for, and they're not integrated in society. They're not working. They're not doing anything. I visited some of these camps, and the migrants have themselves told me that they were really bored with their lives and they didn't know what to do, and they wish that they had a job. So that's not the case. Actually, the reason why, at least in Italy, people are not having children is because of the, I would say, economic crisis mostly. You have almost 40% youth unemployment in Italy overall, and in some southern regions, it goes up to 60%, which is crazy. Like, most young people are not working at all. They're not doing anything. There are no jobs. So how are you going to find jobs for migrants when there aren't enough jobs for Italians themselves who are educated, who went to school here, and these migrants who don't know the language are supposed to find a job instead?
Yeah, I mean, the numbers, when you look at them, are outrageous. 3% of the initial migrant wave into Germany from 2015 got jobs. Only 3%. You can look at Sweden. 58% of welfare payments go to immigrants. More than half of German welfare recipients come from migrant backgrounds. In the Netherlands, 85% of refugees remain unemployed 4 years later because there's little financial incentive to move off unemployment welfare into unskilled work. So there's not even that much difference. So why would they bother? Which, again, goes back to the point. You can't have a giant welfare state and have mass immigration at the same time. Eventually, it's just going to collapse, right? It doesn't work.
Yes, it does not work at all. They don't know how to solve this issue, and it's just being used as a pretext to let more people in, because they're so they've entered like this crisis now where they don't know how to deal with it anymore. But in some cases, I would say that it is an occasion to have more cheap labor into the country, because many European countries have developed worker protection laws that would not apply to illegal immigrants. So a lot of these migrants are being basically used as slaves to be exploited instead of Europeans or the European working class, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so again, they're the great humanitarians, but they're actually exploiting people and making them into slaves. They don't have to abide by the same kind of regulations with a lot of these people. A lot of it's on the black market. So again, it's just complete exploitation. Oh, but we're inhumane. We're the ones who are bad. Anyway, let's talk about Macron, because this was a very interesting thing that he came out with back in April. He said mass migration was Europe's destiny, and the plan was to turn Europe into your Africa. He actually said this. Now, he was citing the words of a French-American journalist and professor called Stephen Smith, who said that the number of Africans living in Europe will grow from 9 million, which is around what it is now, apparently, to between 150 million and 200 million within the next 30 years. Alessandra, can European countries retain their identity if we import hundreds of millions of Africans over the next few decades? Surely, if you import Africa, then you become Africa, right?
Yes, it makes no sense. Like, of course, if there are few people coming in small numbers, like some Africans have always existed in Europe, some Europeans have always existed in Africa. The problem is when you have a mass migration of people who are being brought there, it's like a design, it's purposely made to replace the native people, European people. So it's bringing like this cultural clash between Europeans and Africans, and we're already seeing this unfolding. You know, accusations of racism, people being beat up. There was a case before the election in Italy where this young Italian girl, 19-year-old, she was killed, raped, and mutilated. Her body was put in 2 separate bags, and this triggered a reaction by one Italian man who decided to shoot at random Black people on the street as a revenge. So it's causing a lot of conflict. It's just like a war, an ethnic war, and in a way it's a war between poor people, you know, the poorest segments of both societies.
So what do you think is the overarching agenda here? Because we know they want cheap labor, but again, we know that they can't bring in workforce that will cover that deficit in terms of, you know, a labor force. Is there some kind of malevolent agenda about the replacement of Westerners in general, or are we just talking about people who, I mean, I've often looked at where these big celebrities and big campaigners live, the ones who are very pro-refugee, very pro-mass immigration, and they always live in the whitest areas of London, for example, possible, the whitest areas possible. In Sweden, they had a study of Swedish left-wing politicians. They all lived in the whitest enclaves possible in major Swedish cities. So obviously we know they're virtue signalers, we know they're hypocrites, we know they don't even want to live amongst the conditions that they create. But in terms of, you know, the George Soroses of the world, the globalists of the world, what is the ultimate agenda behind forcing this mass immigration on the West? Do you think there's some kind of malevolence behind it that goes beyond just the economic exploitation?
Yes, I do. I think it is a program designed to basically uproot not just Europeans, but Africans, anyone. They don't have any particular hate for a group of people. They just want people to be uprooted, to not have an identity, to not have a community, to not have a sense of purpose. So they become sort of more docile consumers.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about earlier, basically. You know, make people easier to control, make them docile, make them dependent on the state. That is a dream. That is a dream for technocrats. We'll leave it there, Alessandra, but just tell people where they can find you on social media and where they can read your work.
You can find me on Alessa Bocchi on Twitter, and I'll have a website soon with all my work from North Africa to Italy and Europe.
All right, it is Alessa Bocchi on Twitter. Alessandra Bocchi, really appreciate the time. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
There goes Alessandra Bocchi, and we appreciate her spending time with us. Going to hit a few final news stories now in the last couple of minutes here. We've talked about Germany. We've talked about Spain. We've talked about the refugee crisis in general. We had this story up on InfoWars Europe yesterday. Absolute shocker. Syrian migrant beheads neighbor, then stabs 130 times. This was a 21-year-old, no, a Syrian migrant, stabbed a 21-year-old neighbor, a woman, killed her. That wasn't enough. He had to behead her. They also attacked her sister. Thankfully, she survived. Obviously, her sister didn't. But what's interesting about this is when it went to court, the actual defense team for this Syrian migrant who entered Sweden, this occurred in Sweden, obviously, in 2012, they asked a co-worker of the victim, who had been stabbed 130 times and beheaded, if she had a history of expressing, quote, any criticism of immigration, because maybe she deserved it. If she was a racist, maybe if you're a racist, then you deserve to be beheaded. And that's exactly the reason the murderer cited after stabbing her 130 times and beheading her. Oh, she made a racist remark. Well, maybe she deserved it. Absolutely incredible that they would even bring that up in the court as a kind of justification for this macabre behavior. Absolutely insane. Majid Nawaz is celebrating because he's won a lawsuit, or at least a settlement, with the SPLC. Again, why is the SPLC still treated as a credible organization? Literally, you've got massive organizations, law enforcement bodies, governments, YouTube, Google, working with the Southern Poverty Law Center to police content when they're completely biased, they're completely off the charts insane, by calling Majid Nawaz, who is a Muslim reformer, an anti-Muslim extremist. They literally listed him in their own propaganda as an anti-Muslim extremist, alongside Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who escaped Somalia after being a female genital mutilation victim to speak out to try and reform Islam. She was also listed as an anti-Muslim extremist. Well, the SPLC has lost. They had to pay out $3.3 million and apologize. Absolutely incredible that they're still treated with any credibility. That's going to wrap it up for the show. War Room is coming up next. Don't go away.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
InfoWars comes to mind.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
There's a lot of controversy around this network about Alex Jones.
Google is being accused of hiding negative stories about Hillary and her campaign by changing its algorithm to bury stories like the Clinton body count story. That's according to website InfoWars.
It sounds like it's confirmed there are at least 2 shooters with fully automatic weapons.
Dr. Martin Luther King has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
JFK was shot from the back and the front.
It was almost as if it were a planned implosion. It just pancaked.
They took the babies out of incubators and left the children to die on the floor.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
UFOs.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge?
Israel claims the attack was accidental, but some former U.S. naval officers say it was on purpose. They describe the day's action as part of a continuing cover-up.
Russian intelligence compiled a dossier on Mr. Trump during visits to Moscow.
Russian scum!
Denied everything. He called it all fake news.
And he accused CNN of being fake news.
This is a national emergency.
If they kill Trump or remove Trump, it will cause a massive civil war in this country.
This is a FEMA high-level alert.
We are at war with Russia.
Are you aware that Mr. Stone also stated publicly that he was in direct communication with Julian Assange and WikiLeaks?
The White House and the President are citing InfoWars.
They could shut us down. You're next.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. It's Alex Jones.
We can't extend this free shipping sale much longer with our best-selling items at InfoWarsStore.com. In fact, we can only run it a few more days. We're also running out of some of our best-selling items like our amazing nootropic Rainforce. It's $19.95. Leading competitors are $60 and aren't even as good. It's a great deal normally at $39.95. Rainforce, you've never tried it. This is a great opportunity. $19.95. Also, Alpha Power is 50% off. If you don't know what it's done for me and so many others for stamina, focus, libido, it does so many things. X2, even though we're having trouble sourcing the deep earth crystals of the good halogen iodine, I am blowing out the stockpile of it we have, at least for another few days, at 50% off, and then after that it's going to go back to full price until we secure more of it. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or 888-253-3139, and thank you all for helping fund the second American global revolution.